In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful.
Alif Lam Mim.
Muqatta, which in Arabic means abbreviated or shortened letters, are symbolic letter combinations. They appear respectively at the beginning 29 chapters of the Quran in the form of Alif Lam Mim, Ha Mim, Nun, Ain, Sin, Kaf, etc. They also appear as chapter names such as Taha, Yasin, Sad, and Kaf.
This is the book, and it is guidance sure, without doubt, to those who fear Allah.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 5 for the Tafsir.
Who believe in the unseen, are steadfast in prayer, and spend out of what we have provided for them.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 5 for the Tafsir.
And who believe in the revelation sent to thee, and sent before thy time, and in their hearts have the assurance of the hereafter.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 5 for the Tafsir.
They are on true guidance from their Lord, and it is these who will prosper.
There is no doubt that the Quran is a book of guidance, but it guides only those who are sincere in their search for truth, and who are anxious to be guided. The search for truth is inherent in man's nature. One has simply to uncover one's own true nature in order to find it. True searching and true finding are but the initial and the advanced stages of the same journey. One who searches for truth unravels the closed faculties of his own inner self. Thus, with God's help, the vague yearnings of his nature begin to receive a definite response. The awakening within one of these sincere yearnings is an attempt to discern the world of meanings, the hidden world, behind the world of forms, the present world. When this leads to a discovery, it is transformed into faith in the unseen. That which is initially an urge to submit to some superior power later takes on the form of bowing to the Almighty. That which is initially a wish to sacrifice oneself for some greater good later takes the form of spending one's wealth for the cause of God. That which is initially a quest to comprehend the final outcome of life beyond this world finds an answer in the form of faith in the life to come. To discover truth is to raise one's consciousness to the level of the supreme reality. Those who find truth in this way become complex, free souls. They come to see truth as it really is. Wherever truth is, and whoever proclaims it, they immediately recognize and accept it. No rigidity, convention, or prejudice can come between them and the truth. God gives his protection to people having this nature. His universal order embraces them so that they may be guided on a sure course in this world. Heaven will be their final destination in the life to come. Only those who seek truth can find it. Those who seek it shall surely find it. On this path, there is no divide between seeking and finding.
As to those who reject faith, it is the same to them whether thou warn them or do not warn them, they will not believe.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 5 for the Tafsir.
Allah hath set his seal on their hearts and on their hearing, and on their eyes is a veil, great is the penalty they incur.
If one closes one's eyes, one will not be able to see. If one blocks one's ears, one will not be able to hear. However clear the call of truth may be, it can be understood and accepted only if one opens one's mind to it. God's inaudible call present in the universe, and the audible expression of that call by the preacher of God's word, cannot touch those who have closed minds. The call of truth in its pure, unadulterated form is founded on reality. It is in accord with nature. When it is made, none can fail to recognize it. If one hears it with an open mind, one will know in one's heart that it is nothing else but truth. However, where society is rigidly bound by age-old conventions, people are less concerned with opening their minds to divine realities than they are with supporting the vested interests of the existing system. As God's emissary, the preacher is neither a representative nor a supporter of the conventional structures of society. His call, being new and unfamiliar, poses itself as a threat to material security. Much as people are urged by him to submit to the will of God, they balk at doing so, because it would mean demolishing the world they have made for themselves. It is difficult also for him to convey his message to highly placed individuals who are afraid that, if they follow an insignificant person, they will thereby suffer some diminution of their own personal glory. The two greatest obstacles, then, to the success of the preacher are people's worldliness and arrogance. It is these mental states which prevent people from accepting the truth. The Quran has called them seals over people's hearts. The minds of those who do not consider the call of truth seriously, who are proud and worldly in their attitude, are covered with an invisible veil which makes them impervious to the truth. When one is prejudiced against something, one cannot see its rationality, even if there are clear signs in support of it.
Of the people there are some who say, "We believe in Allah and the last day," but they do not really believe.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 13, for the Tafsir.
Fain would they deceive Allah and those who believe, but they only deceive themselves and realize it not.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 13, for the Tafsir.
In their hearts is a disease, and Allah has increased their disease, and grievous is the penalty they incur, because they are false to themselves.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 13, for the Tafsir.
When it is said to them, "Make not mischief on the earth," they say, "Why, we only want to make peace."
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 13, for the Tafsir.
Of a surety, they are the ones who make mischief, but they realize it not.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 13, for the Tafsir.
When it is said to them, "Believe as the others believe," they say, "Shall we believe as the fools believe?" Nay, of a surety they are the fools, but they do not know.
For those who put worldly interests and expediency first, total and unconditional devotion to truth appears unwise, for their true allegiance is to their worldly interests. Only on a superficial level can they attach themselves to the truth. They consider themselves clever. They think they are safeguarding themselves in this world, and also qualifying to be considered among the pious. But this is no more than wishful thinking. It is a figment of their imagination, rather than a real fact of life. Every test in life removes them further from the path of true religion and brings them closer to their own world-oriented religion. Their hypocrisy is like a cancer which keeps on growing. They consider true believers, who act in the interests of truth, to be ruining themselves for no good reason. They call their own policy, on the other hand, one of reform. They prize it because it enables them to pursue a safe course without clashing with anyone. But this just shows how distorted their reasoning is. If they were to think deeply, they would realize that on earth reform can only come from man giving himself up to God alone, while obstructing any movement aimed at consolidating man's relationship with the will of his Lord amounts to creating disorder on earth. Their seemingly profitable business is in fact running at a loss, for they are forsaking pure truth for an adulterated version of it, which can benefit none.
When they meet those who believe, they say, "We believe." But when they are alone with their evil ones, they say, "We are really with you, we were only jesting."
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 18, for the Tafsir.
Allah will throw back their mockery on them, and give them rope in their trespasses, so they will wander like blind ones to and fro.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 18, for the Tafsir.
These are they who have bartered guidance for error, but their traffic is profitless, and they have lost true direction.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 18, for the Tafsir.
Their similitude is that of a man who kindled a fire. When it lighted all around him, Allah took away their light and left them in utter darkness, so they could not see.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 18, for the Tafsir.
Deaf, dumb, and blind, they will not return to the path.
In a dark room, black and white look the same, but as soon as the lights are turned on, black appears as black and white as white. The same is true of the message of God, which was revealed to the prophets. The divine scriptures are God's beacons to the world. When this light is shed upon mankind, guidance and error clearly appear for what they are. It becomes evident what good and evil deeds consist of, and what their consequences are. But some people, instead of bowing to the truth, want the truth to be subservient to them. The light of God only serves to confuse them. Their hidden jealousy and pride take hold of them. As soon as they see themselves in the divine mirror, their negative sentiments are aroused. Deep-rooted prejudices overcome their senses. They have eyes but cannot see, they have ears but cannot hear, they have tongues but cannot speak. They can neither hear the call of truth, nor respond to it in any way, nor can they find their way by any sign from God. Instead of reflecting upon the call of truth, as they should do, they evade it either by attaching no importance to it or by not listening to it at all.
Or another similitude is that of a rain-laden cloud from the sky. In it are zones of darkness, and thunder and lightning. They press their fingers in their ears to keep out the stunning thunder clap, the while they are in terror of death. But Allah is ever round the rejectors of faith.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 20, for the Tafsir.
The lightning all but snatches away their sight. Every time the light helps them, they walk therein, and when the darkness grows on them, they stand still. And if Allah willed, He could take away their faculty of hearing and seeing, for Allah hath power over all things.
Fear is another factor which prevents them from acknowledging the truth. Rain is a wonderful blessing of God, but with rain come thunder and lightning which terrify faint-hearted people. God's word, as revealed to his prophets, affects them similarly. On the one hand, it holds out to man the promise of great success, but on the other hand, its acceptance places man temporarily at risk. There's the fear of losing one's worldly position, of clashing with the conventional setta. Fear of these things sometimes makes one halt, and sometimes makes one move hesitantly on. But such caution cannot help one. Those who do not respond to God's call open-heartedly shall be deprived of God's blessings in this world as well as in the hereafter.
O ye people, adore your guardian, Lord, who created you and those who came before you, that ye may have the chance to learn righteousness.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 24 for the Tafsir.
Who has made the earth your couch, and the heavens your canopy, and sent down rain from the heavens, and brought forth therewith fruits for your sustenance, then set not up rivals unto Allah when ye know the truth.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 24 for the Tafsir.
And if ye are in doubt as to what we have revealed from time to time to our servant, then produce a surah like thereunto, and call your witnesses or helpers if there are any besides Allah, if your doubts are true.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 24 for the Tafsir.
But if ye cannot, and of a surety ye cannot, then fear the fire whose fuel is men and stones, which is prepared for those who reject faith.
God alone has created man and all that is in the heavens and on earth. He has invested the world with profound significance, and he constantly looks after its needs. The proper course for a man is to take God as his creator, master, and sustainer, and not attempt to set up anyone as a partner with him. That is, a man should give himself up entirely to God. But since he is invisible, it often happens that man gives importance to some visible object and worships that instead of God. He equates the created with the Creator, sometimes just a part of it, and sometimes creation in its entirety, at times calling it by the name of God, and at times doing so without taking God's name. Therein lies man's basic error. The prophets taught man to glorify God alone, and forsake the other things that he had elevated to a position of glory. People whose hearts are attached to objects other than God consider the call of true religion repugnant. They have become so greatly attached to their supposed deities that they cannot believe that they are unreal. They cannot believe that the truth is what is proclaimed by a mortal just like themselves.
But give glad tidings to those who believe and work righteousness, that their portion is gardens, beneath which rivers flow. Every time they are fed with fruits therefrom, they say, Why, this is what we were fed with before, for they are given things in similitude, and they have therein companions pure and holy, and they abide therein forever.
The call of truth is indisputably marked with a divine radiance. Its inimitable style and its irrefutable reasoning go to show that it is a message from God. Those who deny it, irrespective of this, shall find no refuge in God's universe. Those who find God in the Word of God are already given a glimpse of the next world. They are the ones who shall be admitted into the gardens of paradise.
Allah disdains not to use the similitude of things, lowest as well as highest. Those who believe know that it is truth from their Lord. But those who reject faith say, What means Allah by this similitude? By it he causes many to stray, and many he leads into the right path, but he causes not to stray, except those who forsake the path.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 28 for the Tafsir.
Those who break Allah's covenant after it is ratified, and who sunder what Allah has ordered to be joined, and do mischief on earth, these cause loss only to themselves.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 28 for the Tafsir.
How can you reject the faith in Allah, seeing that you were without life, and he gave you life? Then will he cause you to die, and will again bring you to life, and again to him will you return.
Man's first duty to God is to be true to the covenant made between the Creator and his creatures at the beginning of the world, namely, that man should remain God's servant. And his conduct towards his fellow men should be such that all the ties that God has enjoined man to keep may be consolidated. Thirdly, man should not turn people away from following the divine call raised by one of God's servants by inventing groundless arguments against it. The message of truth seeks to harmonize man with his own nature. Those who prevent others from receiving it are guilty of spreading corruption in the land. God has created man from nothing. This is a favor great enough to make man completely surrender himself to God. But God has not just created man and left it at that. He has given him an earth made to suit his needs perfectly. But there is more to the matter than merely this. Immediately after his demise, he will be brought before the Lord of the universe to be judged. This state of affairs demands that he devote himself entirely to God, that he remember and obey God throughout his life, forever remaining his humble servant. When the divine message is so clear and reasonable, why do people not accept it? The chief cause is unwillingness to learn. This manifests itself in various ways: deliberate denigration of God's message, attempts to belittle it by finding flaws in it, or misrepresenting it as irrational or concerned with mere trivialities. One who is not willing to learn from sound advice does not think seriously about it. When some argument is presented to him, he looks at it superficially and sets about finding some shortcomings in it. But those who are willing to learn take the trouble to give those arguments serious thought, and they do not take long to realize that they are faced with the truth. It does not make any difference to them that the truth has been explained in parables of mere gnats and other equally insignificant creatures.
It is he who hath created for you all things that are on earth. Moreover, his design comprehended the heavens, for he gave order and perfection to the 7 firmaments, and of all things he hath perfect knowledge.
God has created man from nothing. This is a favor great enough to make man completely surrender himself to God. But God has not just created man and left it at that. He has given him an earth made to suit his needs perfectly. But there is more to the matter than merely this. Immediately after his demise, he will be brought before the Lord of the universe to be judged. This state of affairs demands that he devote himself entirely to God, that he remember and obey God throughout his life, forever remaining his humble servant.
Behold, thy Lord said to the angels, I will create a vicegerent on earth. They said, Wilt thou place therein one who will make mischief therein and shed blood? Whilst we do celebrate thy praises and glorify thy holy name. He said, I know what ye know not.
The literal meaning of Khalifa or Caliph is one who takes another's place as successor. In the age of hereditary rule, it was generally used for a monarch who took the place of his predecessor. According to this usage, the word came to refer to one invested with power. When God created man to dwell on earth, he decreed that he might enjoy freedom of will. The angels became apprehensive of man being corrupted by this grant of power and free will, and as a consequence, spreading evil and causing bloodshed in the world. History showed that their fears were well-founded. God was also fully aware of this possibility, but he had a particular reason for investing man with power and freedom on earth. If many human beings were to be corrupted by their power, there would also be a substantial number who, in spite of their power and freedom on earth, would acknowledge God's greatness and power and their own helplessness. Such people would, of their own free will, adopt the path of submission and obedience to God. Although comparatively few in number, they would be specially prized above all others. They would be just like the food grains at harvest time, which, although greatly outweighed in bulk by chaff and straw, are the truly valued part of the crop. Indeed, if the chaff and straw are permitted to grow, it is solely so that people may have access to grain.
And he taught Adam the names of all things. Then he placed them before the angels, and said, Tell me the names of these if ye are right.
The mixture of good and evil in mankind became evident when God, in his omnipotence, brought all the progeny of Adam before their first father. He said to the angels, Look, these are the progeny of Adam. Can you give me the name of each one of them, and say what sort of people they will be? The angels, having no knowledge of them, were unable to answer. Then God told Adam their names and characteristics, and then commanded him to pass the knowledge on to the angels. When Adam had explained to them the nature of the human race, they realized that, besides the wicked and the corrupt, there would also be among their number great, righteous, and pious souls.
They said, Glory to thee, of knowledge we have none, save what thou hast taught us. In truth it is thou who art perfect in knowledge and wisdom.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 33, for the Tafsir.
He said, O Adam, tell them their names. When he had told them, Allah said, Did I not tell you that I know the secrets of heaven and earth, and I know what ye reveal and what ye conceal?
Man's greatest crimes, after the denial of his Lord, are spreading corruption and causing bloodshed in the world. Neither an individual nor a group has God's permission to indulge in such actions as may disrupt the order of nature established by God. For example, no man should take the life of another. All actions of this nature disqualify mankind for receiving God's mercy. In short, preserving the system of nature is to reform it, while upsetting the system is equal to spreading corruption.
And behold, we said to the angels, bow down to Adam, and they bowed down. Not so Iblis, he refused and was haughty, he was of those who reject faith.
The word literally means one who was far from the truth, and from the mercy of God.
We said, O Adam, dwell thou and thy wife in the garden, and eat of the bountiful things therein as where and when you will, but approach not this tree, or ye run into harm and transgression.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayah 36 for the Tafsir.
Then did Satan make them slip from the garden, and get them out of the state of felicity in which they had been. We said, Get ye down, all ye people, with enmity between yourselves. On earth will be your dwelling place and your means of livelihood for a time.
When God made Adam stand up in front of the angels, including Iblis, Satan, and tested them by commanding them to bow down before Adam, he was giving the first man on earth a practical demonstration of the two paths that would be open to his progeny. Either they would follow the example of the angels and bow to God's commandments, even if it meant bowing before someone they held inferior to themselves, or else they would be proud like Satan and refuse to bow to others. This is the test that man faces throughout his entire life. Here on earth, man is constantly faced with two alternative courses of action. He can either follow the course set by the angels and carry out God's commandments by bowing before truth and justice in all that he does, or he can act as Satan did and, letting himself be controlled by arrogance and contempt, refuse to concede the right of others.
Then learnt Adam from his Lord words of inspiration, and his Lord turned towards him, for he is oft returning, most merciful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 39 for the Tafsir.
We said, Get ye down all from here, and if, as is sure, there comes to you guidance from me, whosoever follows my guidance, on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 39 for the Tafsir.
Those who reject faith and belie our signs, they shall be companions of the fire, they shall abide therein.
The practical lesson of the forbidden tree demonstrates how man goes astray by letting himself be deceived by Satan and exceeding the bounds that God has laid down for him. As soon as he eats of the forbidden fruit, he is deprived of God's grace, or, in other words, paradise. But this loss is not an irretrievable one. Man still has an opportunity to turn in repentance to his Lord, rectify his actions, and seek forgiveness for his sins. When he turns to the Lord in repentance, God relents towards him and cleanses him of his sins as if he had never committed them. The preacher of truth is in Adam. It is for people to bow before him. If carried away by pride and prejudice, they refuse to acknowledge his position. They are following in Satan's footsteps. Such a denial amounts to having failed the test devised for man by God. God does not become plainly visible in this world. He reveals himself through his signs, thereby testing his creatures. It is only those who can interpret his signs who will discover God himself.
O children of Israel, call to mind the special favor which I bestowed upon you, and fulfill your covenant with me as I fulfill my covenant with you, and fear none but me.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 41 for the Tafsir.
And believe in what I reveal, confirming the revelation which is with you, and be not the first to reject faith therein, nor sell my signs for a small price, and fear me, and me alone.
The greatest favor that God bestows upon a people is to send his prophet to them, thus opening for them the road to eternal salvation. Prior to the times of the Prophet Muhammad, the last of the prophets, this favor was the privilege of the children of Israel. However, soon their religion ceased to be something that they accepted as a matter of conscious decision, and they let it deteriorate into a set of lifeless rituals passed on from one generation to the next. With the coming of the Prophet Muhammad, the reality came to light. Those whose sensitivity to truth was still alive recognized the veracity of his prophethood and followed him. But those for whom religion had become a hereditary tradition found his message unfamiliar and failed to recognize the truth. When they heard it, they rejected it and turned against the prophet. In view of the clear prophecies in the Torah of the coming of an Arab prophet, it would not have been difficult for the Israelites to recognize the truth of his prophethood and believe in him, but to believe in him was not in their worldly interests. Over hundreds of years an ecclesiastical structure had developed, in which the Israelites had held pride of place. Being the successors of saints and prophets, they were looked up to for spiritual leadership. People also paid tribute and presented offerings to them all the year round. It appeared to them that if they accepted the Arab prophet, their privileged religious position would come to an end and their whole profit structure would be demolished.
Cover not truth with falsehood, nor conceal the truth when you know what it is.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 46, for the Tafsir.
And be steadfast in prayer, practice regular charity, and bow down your heads with those who bow down in worship.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 46, for the Tafsir.
Do you enjoin right conduct on the people, and forget to practice it yourselves, and yet ye study the scripture? Will ye not understand?
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 46, for the Tafsir.
Nay, seek Allah's help with patient perseverance and prayer. It is indeed hard, except to those who bring a lowly spirit.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 46, for the Tafsir.
Who bear in mind the certainty that they are to meet their Lord, and that they are to return to Him.
As the Israelites were considered representatives of revealed religion in the Arab world, people used to ask them about the Arab prophet. Pretending innocence, they would put forward such points as would turn people away from the prophet and his mission. They used to preach to people, exhorting them to follow the truth and live their lives according to it. In practice, however, they failed to accept the truth when their turn came to do so. When a positive response to the call of God means relinquishing positions of high honor and prestige, then those who have gained religious rank through worldly elevation find it extremely difficult to follow this course. For the truly devout, however, these considerations are not a hindrance. The fulfillment that others find in worldly pleasures, true believers find in remembering God, in spending for His cause, in obeying His commandments, and being steadfast in treading His path. They know full well that it is God's punishment that is to be feared, not worldly loss.
Children of Israel, call to mind the special favor which I bestowed upon you, and that I preferred you to all other for my message.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 52, for the Tafsir.
Then guard yourselves against a day when one soul shall not avail another, nor shall intercession be accepted for her, nor shall compensation be taken from her, nor shall anyone be helped from outside.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 52, for the Tafsir.
And remember, we delivered you from the people of Pharaoh. They set you hard tasks and punishments, slaughtered your sons and let your women, folk live. Therein was a tremendous trial from your Lord.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 52, for the Tafsir.
Remember, we divided the sea for you and saved you and drowned Pharaoh's people within your very sight.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 52, for the Tafsir.
And remember, we appointed 40 nights for Moses, and in his absence ye took the calf for worship, and ye did grievous wrong.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 52, for the Tafsir.
Even then we did forgive you. There was a chance for you to be grateful.
The Israelites were chosen by God. He selected them for a special task. They were to receive God's scriptures and pass His commandments on to the rest of mankind. In relation to this office, they were granted many other blessings and facilities: victory over their enemies, forgiveness of their sins, special help in times of peril, divine provision for their physical needs, and so on. This misled later generations of Jews into thinking that they were God's chosen people and were assured of salvation in the next world. But such matters as salvation are not a hereditary right of any group. Successive generations are to be judged on their own merits. On the day of judgment, people will be judged individually, according to their actions. To think that anything other than good deeds will avail one is to underestimate the rigors of that day.
And remember, we gave Moses the scripture and the criterion between right and wrong. There was a chance for you to be guided aright.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 57, for the Tafsir.
And remember, Moses said to his people, O my people, ye have indeed wronged yourselves by your worship of the calf. So turn in repentance to your Maker, and slay yourselves the wrongdoers. That will be better for you in the sight of your Maker. Then he turned towards you in forgiveness, for he is oft returning, most merciful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 57, for the Tafsir.
And remember, you said, O Moses, we shall never believe in thee until we see Allah manifestly. But you were dazed with thunder and lightning even as you looked on.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 57, for the Tafsir.
Then we raised you up after your death. Ye had the chance to be grateful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 57, for the Tafsir.
We gave you the shade of clouds and sent down to you manna and quails, saying, eat of the good things we have provided for you, but they rebelled. To us they did no harm, but they harmed their own souls.
True piety is to worship God alone, to believe in Him though one has not seen Him, to live in fear of Judgment Day, to subsist on the pure things of the earth, to prevent whomsoever one can from falling into sin. It is those who adopt this way of life who will be successful in the next world.
And remember, we said, enter this town, and eat of the plenty therein as ye wish, but enter the gate with humility, in posture and in words, and we shall forgive you your faults and increase the portion of those who do good.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 60 for the tafsir.
But the transgressors changed the word from that which had been given them, so we sent on the transgressors a plague from heaven, for that they infringed our command repeatedly.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 60 for the tafsir.
And remember Moses prayed for water for his people. We said, strike the rock with thy staff. Then gushed forth therefrom 12 springs. Each group knew its own place for water. So eat and drink of the sustenance provided by Allah, and do no evil nor mischief on the face of the earth.
God bestowed special blessings upon the Israelites. They should have shown their gratitude by remaining obedient to Him, but they did quite the opposite. They were given possession of a great city and told to enter it not in a vainglorious manner, but in humility and repentance. But instead they started rejoicing in their victory.
Remember you said, O Moses, we cannot endure one kind of food always, so beseech thy Lord for us to produce for us of what the earth groweth its pot, herbs, and cucumbers, its garlic, lentils, and onions. He said, will ye exchange the better for the worse? Go ye down to any town, and ye shall find what ye want. They were covered with humiliation and misery. They drew on themselves the wrath of Allah. This because they went on rejecting the signs of Allah and slaying His messengers without just cause. This because they rebelled and went on transgressing.
Divine provision was given to them in the form of manna and quails so that, free from the struggle for a livelihood, they would be able to devote themselves entirely to carrying out God's commandments, but they took to demanding spicy, cooked foods instead. Discontented with the basic necessities of life, they sought to indulge in worldly luxury. So hardened did they become that even clear signs of God could not move their hearts. They opposed and even killed those servants of God who sought to admonish them.
Those who believe in the Quran and those who follow the Jewish scriptures and the Christians and the Sabians, any who believe in Allah and the last day and work righteousness, shall have their reward with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve.
4 communities are mentioned in this verse: Muslims, who are the followers of the Prophet Muhammad; Jews who follow the Prophet Moses; Christians who follow the Prophet Jesus; and Sabians, who adhered to the teachings of John the Baptist, the Prophet Yahya. The last mentioned sect resided in Iraq in ancient times, but is now extinct. They were people of the book, and offered their prayers facing the Kaaba in Mecca. Here the Muslims have not been mentioned separately, but have been grouped with other communities associated with prophets. This means that all ethnic groups are equal in the sight of God. No community is inherently superior to any other. Only true belief and righteous actions are rewarded with salvation. This is a rule that applies consistently to every community. No one, whether he calls himself Muslim, Jew, Christian, or Sabian, is exempt from this rule. Belonging to a particular community gives no special status in the eyes of God. God elevates to a high rank only those who have sought to mold their own lives according to His divine scheme. The lives of those who associate with the Prophet during his lifetime are always based on true belief and righteous actions. At that time, certain people hear the Prophet's call. Their spirits are moved by his message. An intellectual revolution takes place within them, filling them with new resolve. Their whole pattern of life changes. Where previously they had been guided by personal desires, they now base their lives on the teachings of God, and may truly call themselves followers of the prophets. These are the ones to whom the prophets gave good tidings of eternal blessings in the next world. The situation changes, however, as time passes. For the generations that follow, religion becomes a kind of national heritage. Tidings, which had been given on the basis of faith and righteous actions, come to be considered to be the result of ethnic affiliations. People reckon that they have a special relationship with God that others do not enjoy. One who belongs to a particular community is sure to be saved. Notwithstanding the standard of his faith and deeds, paradise is for us, hell for them. But God does not have a special relationship with any particular community. He has regard solely for man's thoughts and deeds. In the hereafter, People will be judged according to their deeds and character, and not on the basis of the group to which they belong.
Remember, we took your covenant, and we raised above you the towering height of Mount Sinai, saying, Hold firmly to what we have given you and bring ever to remembrance what is therein, perchance ye may fear Allah.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayah 66 for the Tafsir.
But ye turned back thereafter. Had it not been for the grace and mercy of Allah to you, ye had surely been among the lost.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayah 66 for the Tafsir.
And well ye knew those amongst you who transgressed in the matter of the Sabbath. We said to them, Be ye apes, despised and rejected.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayah 66 for the Tafsir.
So we made it an example to their own time and to their posterity, and a lesson to those who fear Allah.
A covenant was made with Moses' people that they would faithfully carry out the divine teachings given to them in the form of the 10 Commandments. The Talmud tells how, at this time, God turned the mountain upside down, holding it above them, and told them either to accept the teachings of the Torah or be destroyed there and then. The same is the case with everyone who embraces true faith. To have faith is to make a contract with God that one will live and die in accordance with His will. What a grave pledge this is! On the one hand, there is man, a tiny, helpless speck in God's world, and on the other, God, whose might upholds the universe. If man keeps his word, he will be granted God's eternal blessings. But if he turns away from his commitment, he is in grave danger of being cast into hell fire, never to emerge again. Everyone who believes in God should go through the same experience as Moses' people. Everyone who binds himself to the contract of faith should live in the fear of breaking his religious vows, thereby bringing catastrophe down upon himself. Sometimes those entrusted with the law of God go astray by contradicting it in practice, while finding words to make it appear that they are following it to the letter. The Israelites, for instance, were commanded to keep holy the Sabbath day and refrain from worldly pursuits on that day. But they violated it and went about their work on the Sabbath as on any other day. Furthermore, they sought to justify their actions and make out that what they were doing conformed to the will of God. This audacity incurred God's displeasure, and they were turned into apes. Whenever one turns against the law of God, one puts oneself on a par with animals who follow no code of ethics. Those who play games with divine law should fear being deprived of their human dignity and being brought down to the level of animals.
Remember, Moses said to his people, Allah commands that ye sacrifice a heifer. They said, Makest thou a laughing stock of us? He said, Allah save me from being an ignorant fool.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 68 for the Tafsir.
They said, Beseech on our behalf thy Lord to make plain to us what heifer it is. He says, the heifer should be neither too old nor too young, but of middling age. Now do what ye are commanded.
Sometimes those entrusted with the law of God go astray by contradicting it in practice, while finding words to make it appear that they are following it to the letter. The Israelites, for instance, were commanded to keep holy the Sabbath day and refrain from worldly pursuits on that day. But they violated it and went about their work on the Sabbath as on any other day. Furthermore, they sought to justify their actions and made out that what they were doing conformed to the will of God. This audacity incurred God's displeasure, and they were turned into apes. Whenever one turns against the law of God, one puts oneself on a par with animals who follow no code of ethics. Those who play games with divine law should fear being deprived of their human dignity and being brought down to the level of animals.
They said, Beseech on our behalf thy Lord to make plain to us her color. He says, a fawn-colored heifer, pure and rich in tone, the admiration of beholders.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 71 for the Tafsir.
They said, Beseech on our behalf thy Lord to make plain to us what she is. To us are all heifers alike. We wish indeed for guidance, if Allah wills.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 71 for the Tafsir.
He says, a heifer not trained to till the soil or water the fields, sound and without blemish. They said, Now hast thou brought the truth. Then they offered her in sacrifice, but not with good will.
Another mistake that the Israelites had made was to destroy the simplicity of divine religion by involving themselves in complicated theological wrangling. They had to learn to interpret God's will in a straightforward manner and obey it immediately. This was another lesson that was taught under the pretext of this murder case. Hair-splitting to define the exact scope of divine edicts will only make things difficult for everyone. additional conditions will only complicate the carrying out of what had originally been a simple commandment.
Remember ye slew a man and fell into a dispute among yourselves as to the crime, but Allah was to bring forth what ye did high.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 73 for the Tafsir.
So he said, strike the body with a piece of the heifer. Thus Allah bringeth the dead to life, and showeth you his signs, perchance ye may understand.
A murder was committed among the Israelites in Moses' time. The method that God revealed to his prophet to identify the killer was that an animal should be sacrificed, and the dead man's corpse be struck with a piece of it. The dead man would then name the murderer. The third lesson in this instance was that life after death is no less a reality than life before death. Just as the dead corpse was revived, so every soul will be raised up in the hereafter and given new life.
Thenceforth were your hearts hardened, they became like a rock and even worse in hardness. For among rocks there are some from which rivers gush forth, others there are which when split asunder send forth water, and others which sink for fear of Allah. And Allah is not unmindful of what ye do.
Those who seek to find loopholes in God's commandments become more and more insensitive. God is another name for the most supreme of beings. If man's faith is a living faith, belief in God shakes his soul so deeply that his verbosity is replaced by stunned silence. But when the heart is hardened, people begin to manipulate the divine scriptures, for they are used to doing the same with human writings. Such brazenness on their part increases their insensitivity, leading to hardening of their hearts. Their hearts are not moved before the might of their Lord. Their souls become resistant to any excitement at the thought of God. They remain rigid as the most impervious of rocks. 3 aspects of the symbolic meaning of rocks have been mentioned in this verse. 1. One sees in the mountains how streams flow over the rocks, finally to join together to form a river. This is symbolic of a certain type of human being, one in whose heart fear of God is lodged, like water in the bosom of a mountain. This fear of the Lord flows from his eyes in the form of tears, as streams flow down the crags of the hillside. 2. Some rocks seem to be nothing more than dry boulders, but when cracked, reveal huge pools of water beneath and wells from which people quench their thirst. This is on a parallel with one who, at first sight, appears to be far from the Lord. But then he is struck by some calamity which shakes his soul. With floods of tears in his eyes, he hastens to turn towards God. 3. Sometimes one sees landslides on mountain sides, with great slabs of rocks crashing down the slopes. This is comparable to a human being who has adopted an unjust attitude towards another. But the moment he is reminded of the command of God, he immediately submits to it. He is not willing to give in to another human being. But when man's issues become God's affairs, he surrenders to him in all humility. In nature, there is a message in every single thing, for God has created the world as a source of admonition and remembrance for man, to demonstrate to him how to make his life conform to the divine will. While throughout the universe, this message is conveyed in the language of silent examples, in the Qur'an it has been expressly set forth.
Can ye, O ye men of faith, entertain the hope that they will believe in you? Seeing that a party of them heard the word of Allah, and perverted it knowingly after they understood it.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 77 for the Tafsir.
Behold, when they meet the men of faith, they say, we believe, but when they meet each other in private, they say, shall you tell them what Allah hath revealed to you, that they may engage you in argument about it before your Lord? Do ye not understand their aim?
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 77 for the Tafsir.
Know they not that Allah knoweth what they conceal, and what they reveal?
One of the reasons for the promptness with which the people of Medina recognized the Prophet Muhammad and believed in him was that they had often heard from their Jewish neighbors of the coming of a final prophet. They had therefore been expecting his arrival. The Jews then were responsible for the Muslims' initial fervor for Islam. It was only natural that the Muslims, in their turn, should hope that the Jews would unhesitatingly accept the prophethood of Muhammad. With every hope of a positive response, it was with sublime feelings that they called on the Jews to join them in their belief in the Prophet. How shocked the Muslims were then, when they found that, contrary to their expectations, the Jews were not ready to accept their invitation to accept Islam. Rather, their efforts had the opposite effect, for the Prophet's opponents took the opportunity to ask the Muslims, how are you so sure about the prophethood of Muhammad? If he were truly a prophet, the Jews would have been the first to believe in him, for their knowledge of what is written in the scriptures is greater than yours. By acceptance of a truth is not dependent upon knowledge alone, one has also to be sincere. As for the Jews, they had already altered their own scriptures, though they knew them to be the word of God, seeking out loopholes in any part of the holy scriptures that did not conform to their wishes. They altered the word of God at will. Religion was subordinated to their worldly interests. However true something may be, if one is bent on denial and intentional distortion, one is sure to find some justification or the other for it. Such a perverse attitude finally leads to deliberate misrepresentation of the true word of God. One who has such a reverent attitude towards the divine scriptures can never appreciate the gravity of matters concerning God. He hears the word of God, but he can always find words to show that the commandment does not apply to him. He believes in God, but his insensitivity makes him commit acts of flagrant rebellion against him which no one who really believes that God is watching over him, and hearing what he says, would ever dare to perpetrate.
And there are among them illiterates who know not the book, but see therein their own desires, and they do nothing but conjecture.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 82, for the Tafsir.
And woe to those who write the book with their own hands, and then say, "This is from Allah," to traffic with it for miserable price. Woe to them for what their hands do write, and for the gain they make thereby.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 82, for the Tafsir.
And they say, "The fire shall not touch us but for a few numbered days." Say, have ye taken a promise from Allah, for he never breaks his promise? Or is it that ye say of Allah what ye do not know?
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 82, for the Tafsir.
Nay, those who seek gain in evil and are girt round by their sins, they are companions of the fire, therein shall they abide forever.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 82, for the Tafsir.
But those who have faith and work righteousness, they are companions of the garden, therein shall they abide forever.
The Arabic word for false notions is imani. According to Ibn Abbas, Farah and Mujahid, some of the most reliable of the Quranic commentators, the word refers to the mythical tales invented by Jewish scholars. The overall aim of these stories was to prove that paradise was reserved for the Jews. Added to this, statements in support of the theory that the Jews were God's chosen people were attributed to venerated Jewish saints. It was made out that certain magical properties were inherent in their religion, ensuring salvation by virtue of mere adherence to the run-of-the-mill rites of Judaism. Such sacred recipes for cheap salvation are very attractive to the masses, for they give credence to the popular notion based on wishful thinking that there is no need to discipline oneself, no need to lead a responsible life. Superstitious charms and magical remedies are enough to cure one's spiritual ills and have one admitted to heaven. The scholars who taught these tales, attributing them to past saints, became highly regarded, for the theories they expounded were designed to win popular support. Facilitation of eternal salvation became for them a lucrative source of worldly income. People flocked to support them. They were showered with offerings, for they ushered others along the path to a paradise that did not have to be earned. In return, they received worldly wealth that they did not have to labor for. This has been a failing in the people of the book in every age. They wanted to live in a dream world, thinking that they had no obligation save the perfunctory performance of certain empty rituals, and deluding themselves into believing that they had certain inalienable rights given by God. Such people cannot accept the call of true religion, for truth demolishes all their wishful thinking and makes them face the stark realities of life.
Remember, we took a covenant from the children of Israel to this effect: worship none but Allah, treat with kindness your parents and kindred, and orphans and those in need, speak fair to the people, be steadfast in prayer, and practice regular charity. Then did ye turn back, except a few among you, and ye backslide even now.
Man's first duty to God is to become his worshipper without ascribing any partners to him. Secondly, he should show kindness to others. Kindness starts at home, with one's parents and family, extends to one's neighbors and relatives, and finally reaches out to everyone with whom one comes into contact. There is only one proper way to deal with others, and that is with justice and well-wishing. Where one is really tested is in one's dealings with orphans and the needy, that is, with the weaker members of society. As for the strong, their strength itself guarantees that they will be given deferential treatment. But so far as the weak are concerned, there is no such incentive to deal with them justly. Therefore, one should be especially careful to behave well towards them. People who are good to those who wield no worldly power and possess scant resources do so for God's sake alone, for they have no other incentive. There are various reasons for having little inclination to show kindness when dealing with the weak. Benefactors frequently regard themselves as superior persons, and, when they are not shown what they consider to be due deference, they tend to treat people less fortunate than themselves with disdain. Then the thought of a permanent liability is often so irksome to them that they resort to ill-mannered behavior to rid themselves of a burdensome obligation. This attitude leaves no room for the notion that the weak also have their self-respect. When the benefactor is not shown what he considers to be due deference, he regards the beneficiary as unworthy and incompetent. This thinking finds expression in various ways.
And remember, we took your covenant to this effect: shed no blood amongst you, nor turn out your own people from your homes, and this ye solemnly ratified, and to this ye can bear witness.
See Surah Al-Baqarah at 86 for the Tafsir.
After this it is ye, the same people, who slay among yourselves, and banish a party of you from their homes, assist their enemies against them, in guilt and rancor, and if they come to you as captives, ye ransom them, though it was not lawful for you to banish them. Then is it only a part of the book that you believe in, and do you reject the rest? But what is the reward for those among you who behave like this, but disgrace in this life? And on the day of judgment they shall be consigned to the most grievous penalty. For Allah is not unmindful of what ye do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 86, for the Tafsir.
These are the people who buy the life of this world at the price of the hereafter. Their penalty shall not be lightened, nor shall they be helped.
Before the advent of Islam, 3 Jewish tribes inhabited the area around Medina: the Banu Nadir, the Banu Qurayza, and the Banu Qaynuqa. Despite the fact that all of them adhered to Mosaic law, ignorant prejudices had divided them into 2 groups. They had become enmeshed, along with the polytheist tribes of Medina, Al-Aws, and the Khazraj, in political maneuvering. The Banu Nadir and the Banu Qurayza had aligned themselves with the Aws tribe, and the Banu Qaynuqa with the Khazraj. Divided into 2 camps in this manner, the 3 Jewish tribes were constantly at war with one another. The basic teachings of Islamic law demand the total renunciation of pagan ways, the suppressing of one's selfish desires, and the controlling of one's worldly needs. That is why the commands of Islamic law are ignored in politics. Obedience to them would bring about true piety, but people do not like to involve themselves in such arduous practices. They prefer to put on a pretense of piety by conducting certain superficial rituals. This is tantamount to issuing a self-made edition of divine religion. It is to disregard the hereafter and attach importance to the worldly aspect of religion in the hope that zeal in performing actions which promise worldly fame and honor will qualify them for the reward reserved for true piety. But such brazen distortion of religion can only earn one God's wrath. It does not merit any reward from God.
We gave Moses the book and followed him up with a succession of messengers. We gave Jesus the son of Mary clear signs and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. Is it that whenever there comes to you a messenger with what ye yourselves desire not, ye are puffed up with pride? Some you called impostors, and others ye slay.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 88 for the Tafsir.
They say, our hearts are the wrappings which preserve Allah's word, we need no more. Nay, Allah's curses on them for their blasphemy, little is it they believe.
The Torah was the book of God revealed to the Jews. Gradually, however, they ceased to treat it as a source of divine guidance and came to regard it as a sacred relic of their national heritage, a symbol of ethnic superiority. It became more a guarantee of salvation than a guide as to how salvation could be earned. After Moses, several prophets arose among the Jewish people: Joshua, David, Zechariah, John the Baptist, and finally Jesus, to name but a few, all of whom pointed out to the Jews that it was not enough just to revere the Torah as a holy book. Its teachings had to be actually practiced. It is futile to believe in the sacredness of the Holy Scriptures if one does not implement their message in one's everyday life. But the Jews, the very people who held the Torah in such high esteem, were extremely intolerant of the prophet's exhortations. The reason for such a reaction on their part was that they had allowed self-interest and worldly ambitions to rule their lives, while passing themselves off as bearers and upholders of the true faith. As long as religion served to consolidate their worldly status, they welcomed it, but were loath to accept the message of truth presented to them in all its purity, which they saw as a threat to the hegemony they had secured for themselves on the basis of religion. It was their egoism which came in the way of true religiosity. Instead of being the first to believe in it, they rejected the message as well as the messenger, subjecting God's prophets to scorn and victimization. They called them impostors and even went to the extent of killing them.
And when there comes to them a book from Allah, confirming what is with them, although from of old they had prayed for victory against those without faith, when there comes to them that which they should have recognized, they refuse to believe in it, but the curse of Allah is on those without faith.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 90, for the Tafsir.
Miserable is the price for which they have sold their souls, in that they deny the revelation which Allah has sent down, in insolent envy that Allah of His grace should send it to any of His servants He pleases. Thus have they drawn on themselves wrath upon wrath. And humiliating is the punishment of those who reject faith.
The Jews of Arabia behaved similarly with the Prophet Muhammad. They had seen prophecies of the coming of a final prophet in their scriptures and had eagerly anticipated his arrival. When he comes, they used to say, "We will join with him in a grand alliance against the pagans and idolaters." But these proved to be empty words on their part, a pretense aimed at consolidating their status as undisputed guardians of divine faith. When the Prophet came, the truth of their position was exposed. They were shown to be steeped in bigotry, reluctant to believe in a prophet who did not come from the Jewish race. They could not dispute the authentic indications presented by the Quran in support of his prophethood. All they could say was, "It all sounds very impressive, but our ancestral religion is good enough for us. Our hearts are sealed, and we will not accept anything besides the faith we have inherited from our forefathers."
When it is said to them, "Believe in what Allah hath sent down," they say, "We believe in what was sent down to us," yet they reject all besides, even if it be truth confirming what is with them. Say, "Why then have ye slain the prophets of Allah in times gone by, if ye did indeed believe?"
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 93, for the Tafsir.
There came to you Moses with clear signs, yet ye worshipped the calf even after that, and ye did behave wrongfully.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 93, for the Tafsir.
And remember we took your covenant and we raised above you the towering height of Mount Sinai, saying, "Hold firmly to what we have given you, and hearken to the law." They said, "We hear, and we disobey," and they had to drink into their hearts of the taint of the calf because of their faithlessness. Say, "Vile indeed are the behests of your faith if ye have any faith."
The Jews were not ready to accept the Quran because they thought they were already rightly guided. They were sure that the very fact that they belonged to the largest group of the followers of truth, that is, the Israelites, that would be enough to earn them salvation. But in fact, this was a feeling of ethnic superiority which they mistook for love of truth. The communal values of their group came to occupy the position of pure truth. That was why, when the truth appeared in its original form, they failed to accept it. Had their aim been to find pure truth, they would not have found it difficult, since predictions about it had appeared in their own secret book, the Torah, to the effect that now it was the Quran that was the book of truth to be followed, and not the religion of their own group.
Say, if the last home, with Allah, be for you specially, and not for anyone else, then seek ye for death, if ye are sincere.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 96, for the Tafsir.
But they will never seek for death, on account of the sins which their hands have sent on before them, and Allah is well acquainted with the wrong-doers.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 96, for the Tafsir.
Thou wilt indeed find them, of all people, most greedy of life, even more than the idolaters. Each one of them wishes he could be given a life of 1,000 years, but the grant of such life will not save him from due punishment. For Allah sees well all that they do.
The fact that the Israelites were not really concerned with truth is proved by their own history. It was they who had slain their own prophets, such as Zechariah and John the Baptist, the only reason for these actions being that these prophets had criticized the Israelites' mode of living and sought to bring them back to the divine way. Nehemiah 9:26. They had seen Moses perform undeniable miracles, but when he was not with them in person, having left them to spend 40 days on Mount Sinai, they started worshipping the golden calf. It had only been his personal authority which had kept them under control. When the mount was raised threateningly above their heads, they temporarily agreed to do all that the Lord hath spoken. Exodus 19:5, 16, 18. But after that most of them returned to their disobedient ways. If they had really been seeking God, their attention would have been entirely focused on the life after death, but in fact, they more than all the others were obsessed with the love of the present world.
Say, whoever is an enemy to Gabriel, for he brings down the revelation to thy heart by Allah's will, a confirmation of what went before, and guidance and glad tidings for those who believe.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 98, for the Tafsir.
Whoever is an enemy to Allah and His angels and messengers, to Gabriel and Michael, lo, Allah is an enemy to those who reject faith.
Owing to their own rebelliousness, the Israelites had severe punishments meted out to them in ancient times. It was God's way to warn them of these impending punishments beforehand, and such warnings came to them through the prophets, who were acting on the words of the Archangel Gabriel. The moral was that people had to follow God's commandments. If they persisted in a sinful life, they would be exposing themselves to His wrath. But instead of heeding these admonitions, the Israelites came to regard Gabriel as their enemy, because it had always been he who gave prior warning through the prophets about impending doom. Consequently, when the Prophet Muhammad proclaimed that he was receiving his revelation through Gabriel, they said, "So, it is our old enemy Gabriel, who always brings commands from heaven against us." That explains why the scriptures, the birthright of the Israelites, are being conveyed to one who belongs to another tribe. Now angels, being the rarefied creatures that they are, do not hold grudges against ordinary mortals. They descend to earth only by divine command in order to carry out the tasks assigned to them by their Creator, in this case, the revelation of the scriptures to the prophet whom God Himself had chosen. Given the clear proofs that the Arab prophet had had the same revelation communicated to him as had been received by Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, and that it tallied with the previous divine scriptures, there were no grounds for the Israelites to reject the divine message. Their negative reaction was the result of their having led insincere, unrestricted lives which had become dominated by self-interest, empty convention, and racial prejudice. Religion had been adhered to only on a superficial level, just to keep up the pretense that the Israelites were, in fact, faithfully treading the path of God.
We have sent down to thee manifest signs ayat, and none reject them but those who are perverse.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 101, for the Tafsir.
Is it not the case that every time they make a covenant, some party among them throw it aside? Nay, most of them are faithless.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 101, for the Tafsir.
And when there came to them a messenger for Allah, confirming what was with them, a party of the people of the book threw away the book of Allah behind their backs, as if it had been something they did not know.
Perversion sets in the people of the book for just one reason. They come to believe that by uttering mere words, or by performing lifeless rituals, they will be able to earn salvation, but salvation can be earned only by performing righteous actions. During this stage of decline, superstition comes to be more highly regarded than actual good deeds. People begin to expect mysterious kinds of results or benefits by performing senseless rituals. This thinking, initially centering on salvation, later comes to dominate the entire national policy of the group. A realistic approach is thus replaced by a superstitious approach. Now those who merely make an outward show of following their religion are inevitably averse to responding in earnest to the proclamation of true, unadulterated religion. For such people, the call is seen as a threat to the worldly honor and status that they enjoy owing to their worldly interpretation of religion. Due to their negativism, they begin to make such representations as are outwardly correct but which, in terms of the inner reality, are totally meaningless. There is no doubt about it that the coming of the angels and messengers was entirely a part of the divine plan. All arguments point to the fact that the Arab prophet received the same message as was sent down to Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, and that the revelation received by the Arab prophet tallied exactly with the predictions made in previous divine scriptures. This proves beyond all doubt that it was sent by God Himself. People make many protestations of their faith, but all these mouthings being hollow and meaningless, they bear no relation to true faith and piety.
They followed what the evil ones gave out falsely against the power of Solomon. The blasphemers were, not Solomon, but the evil ones, teaching men magic, and such things as came down at Babylon to the angels Harut and Marut. But neither of these taught anyone such things without saying, "We are only for trial, so do not blaspheme." They learned from them the means to sow discord between man and wife. But they could not thus harm anyone except by Allah's permission. And they learned what harmed them, not what profited them. And they knew that the buyers of magic would have no share in the happiness of the hereafter. And vile was the price for which they did sell their souls, if they but knew.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 103, for the Tafsir.
If they had kept their faith and guarded themselves from evil, far better had been the reward from their Lord, if they but knew.
When superstition and apathy set in the declining Jewish race, certain individuals exploited this tendency in order to make commercial gains by providing success seekers with magical prescriptions. To make their business flourish, these unscrupulous profiteers attributed their art to Solomon, saying that the extraordinary powers he exercised over the spirits and winds were, in fact, based on his knowledge of magic, and claimed that this knowledge had been passed on to them by the spirits. This claim to authority accounted in great measure for the rapid spread of sorcery, which soon developed into a highly popular art among the Jews. When angels came to Lot's people who were practicing homosexuals, they came in the garb of handsome boys in order to test them. Similarly, angels were sent to the Jews in Babylon in the garb of holy men to teach them magic, at the same time making it quite clear that they were only putting the Jews to the test, this being a form of knowledge that should not be practiced. But the Jews took no heed of this warning. They practiced magic with great fervor and even used it for illicit ends.
O ye of faith, say not to the messenger words of ambiguous import, but words of respect, and hearken to him. To those without faith is a grievous punishment.
Some people would sit in the prophet's company, and by playing on words, make a mockery of his teachings. For instance, instead of using the unambiguous Arabic word for may we have your attention, unzerna, they would say reina. Reina, when pronounced properly, has much the same meaning as unzerna, but with the protraction of the second vowel, it becomes Rina, meaning our shepherd, and with the protraction of the first it becomes Raina, which means idiot.
It is never the wish of those without faith among the people of the book, nor of the pagans, that anything good should come down to you from your Lord. But Allah will choose for His special mercy whom He will, for Allah is Lord of grace abounding.
The Muslims were told, therefore, to avoid ambiguous words, and to be quite clear in their speech. Words with a derisive shade of meaning should be especially avoided. Furthermore, they were enjoined to pay close attention to what the Prophet said and to try to understand it on their own, without resorting to excessive questioning. Receptiveness rather than obstinacy was to mark their attitude to his instructions. This was the way to gain faith, and it was the consolidation and strengthening of faith that was to be sought. The believers were also told not to be jealous of another person's valuable possessions, for it was God Himself who had bestowed that particular blessing on His servant. God Himself decreed that the Prophet be the recipient of divine revelation. If one were earnest in seeking to learn from him, one could share in the blessing he received.
None of our revelations do we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, but we substitute something better or similar. Knowest thou not that Allah hath power over all things?
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 109 for the Tafsir.
Knowest thou not that to Allah belongeth the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and besides Him ye have neither patron nor helper?
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 109 for the Tafsir.
Would ye question your messenger as Moses was questioned of old? But whoever changeth from faith to unbelief hath strayed without doubt from the even way.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 109 for the Tafsir.
Quite a number of the people of the book wish they could turn you people back to infidelity after ye have believed, from selfish envy, after the truth hath become manifest unto them. But forgive and overlook till Allah accomplish His purpose, for Allah hath power over all things.
One who has discovered the truth by the help of God has to face stiff opposition when he starts to communicate it to others. One reason is that acceptance of truth entails negation of the self. People of high social status always find this hard, and none more so than the people of the book, who considered prophethood to be their exclusive right. Unable to conceive of a prophet coming amongst people other than them, they tried various ploys to turn people away from the Arab prophet. One of the theological objections that they raised to his teachings was on the subject of abrogation. Some of the Quranic injunctions differ from Mosaic law, so they would say, does God make mistakes in His revelations, that He sends down one commandment and then replaces it with another? This shows that what your Prophet Muhammad is teaching is not from God, but is his own creation. So intensive had this propaganda campaign become that even some simple-minded Muslims were affected and started raising the issue with the Prophet.
And be steadfast in prayer, and regular in charity, and whatever good ye send forth for your souls before you, ye shall find it with Allah, for Allah sees well all that ye do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 112 for the Tafsir.
And they say, none shall enter paradise unless he be a Jew or a Christian. Those are their vain desires. Say, produce your proof if ye are truthful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 112 for the Tafsir.
Hey, whoever submits his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good, he will get his reward with his Lord. On such shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve.
Once the Jews had set their minds against the message of Islam as being worthless, they became alarmed by the heartfelt acclaim with which many were receiving it. They considered themselves the only ones qualified to pass decrees on truth and falsehood. How could others be allowed to believe in what they themselves had chosen to disbelieve? The first step that they took was to incite the polytheists to rise up against the Muslims. Secondly, they tried to mislead Muslim converts about their new religion, putting doubts into their minds in the hope that they would revert to the religion of their forefathers. It was only natural that this should provoke the Muslims, but God told them that this was not the time for violent reaction. Muslims should always be patient, since patience prevents one from taking negative retaliatory measures in the heat of the moment. They should be steadfast in prayers, for prayer brings one closer to God. They should never fail in the payment of the prescribed alms. The zakat for a society in which the rich are willing to share with the poor will be based on compassion. There will be a real sense of togetherness among its members. The Jews used to tell new Muslim converts that if they had to forsake their ancestral religion, they should become Jews or Christians. Being the descendants of saints and prophets throughout history, they were the ones who would go to heaven. But the Quran tells us that one does not merit entry into heaven by dint of belonging to a certain community. Everyone will be judged according to his own actions. National status is of no significance in the sight of God. To be sincere in one's faith is to become so devoted to God that everything else assumes secondary importance. Prejudices, personal loyalties, material or worldly interests should not come in the way of responding to the call of truth.
The Jews say, the Christians have naught to stand upon, and the Christians say, the Jews have naught to stand upon. Yet they profess to study the same book. Like unto their word is what those say who know not, but Allah will judge between them in their quarrel on the day of judgment.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 114 for the Tafsir.
And who is more unjust than he who forbids that in places for the worship of Allah, Allah's name should be celebrated? Whose zeal is in fact to ruin them? It was not fitting that such should themselves enter them except in fear. For them there is nothing but disgrace in this world, and in the world to come an exceeding torment.
To the Israelites, the criterion of truth was their association with the prophets and saints. That was why they believed that their community was in the right while other communities were in the wrong. As for the Christians, they considered themselves unique in that God's beloved Son had been sent to them. Even the polytheists of Mecca thought of themselves as superior to others, basing their claim on the fact that they were the guardians of God's sacred house. Thus every nation had set its own self-styled religious standards, according to which they themselves inevitably appeared to be in the right, and everyone else in the wrong. Their actions, however, did not substantiate their claims. For one thing, they had become divided into sects, though all of them swore allegiance to the divine scriptures. They took every opportunity to deny others the right to enter places of worship, though they would say that they were doing this to protect the sanctity of these places. In fact, they were ruining them, for places of worship become derelict when people are denied the right of worship there. If a worshipper has the correct attitude, he will never deny the right to worship to those who come to do so. He will never persecute those who come to serve the Lord. When one is truly conscious of God's greatness and one's own helplessness before Him, one's humility will show in one's dealings with others. One will not seek to harm one's fellow men in any way, let alone deny them their fundamental right to worship God.
To Allah belong the east and the west, whithersoever ye turn, there is the presence of Allah. For Allah is all-pervading, all-knowing.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 119 for the Tafsir.
Ye say, Allah hath begotten a son, glory be to Him. Nay, to Him belongs all that is in the heavens and on earth. Everything renders worship to Him.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 119 for the Tafsir.
To Him is due the primal origin of the heavens and the earth. When He decreeth a matter, He saith to it, Be, and it is.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 119 for the Tafsir.
Say those without knowledge, Why speaketh not Allah unto us? Or why cometh not unto us a sign? So said the people before them words of similar import. Their hearts are alike. We have indeed made clear the signs unto any people who hold firmly to faith in their hearts.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 119 for the Tafsir.
Verily we have sent thee in truth as a bearer of glad tidings and a warner, but of thee no question shall be asked to the companions of the blazing fire.
Another error into which they fell was to liken God to men. A human being, for instance, cannot be in two places at the same time, and in consequence, people think that God is also to be found only in some particular place. But God is everywhere. True, He has prescribed a direction for us to face when we worship, but this is a purely organizational requirement for prayer. It does not mean that God is to be found in only one direction and not in any other. Another outcome of this basic misconception of God's nature is people's attributing a son to Him. But only those who have needs beget sons, and God is above all such imperfections and limitations. He is complete in Himself. Such beliefs do not stem from God. Man has invented them himself.
Never will the Jews or the Christians be satisfied with thee unless thou follow their form of religion. Say, the guidance of Allah, that is the only guidance. Wert thou to follow their desires after the knowledge which hath reached thee, then wouldst thou find neither protector nor helper against Allah.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 121 for the Tafsir.
Those to whom we have sent the book study it as it should be studied. They are the ones that believe therein. Those who reject faith therein, the loss is their own.
All those whom God has sent to preach truth on earth have been confronted with the same kind of reaction. If you are God's envoy, people say to them, why are you not blessed with great worldly treasures? Such people themselves can think only in worldly terms, so they expect God's messenger to come up to their materialistic standards. They cannot conceive of someone being God's messenger who is not endowed with worldly grandeur. This is the reason the prophets of God have had to face opposition throughout the ages. How people think, could a great God, whose kingdom encompasses everything, starting with the earth and going to the furthest expanse of the heavens, have chosen such an ordinary person as His messenger? The signs of God were reflected in the lives and teachings of His prophets. Indeed, the prophets' words and deeds, based as they were on truth, were manifestations of God's signs. But people could not see such signs because they were too materialistic in their thinking. Their minds were molded in such a manner that they acknowledged only tangible, visible signs of greatness. The invisible, but intensely meaningful signs that God gave His prophets meant nothing to them. When the preacher comes armed with forceful arguments based on truth, his hearers fail to comprehend them because of their negative mindset. In ancient times, the Jews and Christians had been the bearers of divinely revealed religion on earth. When they went into decline, however, their religion was reduced to a set of ethnic customs. Piety lay in belonging to their community and impiety in being apart from it. Their sole criterion for judging between truth and falsehood was the individual's relation to his own community. This sectarian attitude prevented them from accepting genuine, unadulterated religion when it was presented to them. True religion can be accepted only by those who are alive to their own true human natures, unlike those who, having suppressed their own true natures, have forsaken natural religion for artificial dogmas.
O children of Israel, call to mind the special favor which I bestowed upon you, and that I preferred you to all others for my message.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 124 for the Tafsir.
Then guard yourselves against a day when one soul shall not avail another, nor shall compensation be accepted from her, nor shall intercession profit her, nor shall anyone be helped from outside.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 124 for the Tafsir.
And remember that Abraham was tried by his Lord with certain commands, which he fulfilled. He said, I will make thee an imam to the nations. He pleaded, and also imams from my offspring. He answered, but my promise is not within the reach of evildoers.
The children of Israel were selected by God to perform a very special task. They were to call other nations to turn to God, impressing on them the fact that they were answerable to their Lord for their actions. God sent innumerable prophets from amongst them to help and guide them in the performance of this task. Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, David, Solomon, Zechariah, John the Baptist, and Jesus, to name just a few. Over the centuries, however, the community of the children of Israel began to degenerate. They took their privileged position, which was in fact due solely to the lofty task that had been entrusted to them, to be an indication of ethnic superiority. They thus lost the right to be representatives of divine religion on earth. The coming of the era of prophet signified the replacement of the children of Israel by the children of Ishmael as God's chosen people. It was they who were chosen to carry on the task of communicating God's word to other nations of the world. Those among the children of Israel who were truly pious and God-fearing soon realized that the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad came to him from God. They recognized that the word he preached emanated from the same source that had inspired the prophets before him. Those who denied him were acting solely out of prejudice. They refused to accept that any other nation besides their own could have been selected to benefit by God's favor. These people were warned, through the Arab prophet, that in the next world value would be attached solely to true faith borne out by earnest actions. In this world, one person is able to bear the burden of another. Sometimes intercession is accepted. Sometimes one can free oneself by giving compensation. Sometimes a helper is at hand to see one through a difficult situation. In the next world, however, none of these mitigating factors will be allowed to come into play. There, God's justice will apply to one and all equally, for no ethnic group holds a monopoly over the next world. Take the example of Abraham, patriarch of both the Arabs and the Jews. He was granted leadership of mankind only after he had undergone very severe tests and had shown himself to be faithful and true to God under all circumstances. What God had demanded of Abraham was the most difficult sacrifice, his son's life, and when God finally intervened before Abraham could actually sacrifice his own son, it was because Abraham had demonstrated his perfect willingness to make any sacrifice demanded of him by God, no matter how great or how terrible it might have been. The rule that applied to Abraham applies to every generation. Only those who prove themselves worthy will be granted a share in God's covenant. Those who do not will meet the same fate as any other offenders in God's sight, regardless of the nation to which they belong. One who is willing to make soul-searing sacrifices for God's cause shows his utmost dedication to it. It is only just and natural, then, that he should become the leader of his people.
Remember, we made the house a place of assembly for men and a place of safety, and take ye the station of Abraham as a place of prayer, and we covenanted with Abraham and Ismael, that they should sanctify my house for those who compass it round, or use it as a retreat, or bow, or prostrate themselves therein in prayer.
Every year, the faithful come from all over the world to visit the Kaaba in Mecca, where no one is allowed to harm even the lowliest living creature. For Mecca has been made into a sacred place of worship for all time. Since people come to this place to remember God in an atmosphere of peace and solitude, it has to be cleansed of all impurities, and all activities that are contrary to this basic purpose are banned. Here the faithful bow and prostrate themselves, their greatest mark of respect for their Creator being the circumambulation of the Kaaba.
And remember, Abraham said, My Lord, make this a city of peace, and feed its people with fruits, such of them as believe in Allah and the last day. He said, Yea, and such as reject faith, for a while will I grant them their pleasure, but will soon drive them to the torment of fire, an evil destination indeed.
In ancient times, Arabia was the most arid land on earth. Its sandy surfaces and barren rocks were totally unsuitable for any kind of cultivation. Worse, it was totally exposed to attacks from the outside world. 4,000 years ago, Abraham was commanded to take his family into an uncultivable valley in that part of Arabia known as Hijj, and settle them there. Abraham bowed to the will of God without slightest hesitation. When he had taken his family to that uncultivable and inhospitable valley, he prayed to God, O my God, I have done as was commanded. Now listen to the call of your servant, and make this town a place of peace, and make special provision for the material needs of its citizens, for the land that they inhabit is uncultivable. Abraham's prayer was answered. The land of Hijj thus has remained an abode of peace and plenty up to the present day. The believer's whole life should be an act of worship. In whatever far-off corner of the world he lives, he should at all times remember that, one day, he shall have to return to the Lord. He should cause no harm to his fellow men, and as for the earth he lives on, it should be thought of as a place of worship and kept free of all pollution. Although physically in this world, his heart and mind should always be focused on God, his life should revolve around him alone. His whole life should be that submission to him. True religion makes certain demands on everyone, sometimes even requires that his children be taken to a place as arid and uncultivable as Abraham's valley. Whatever is entailed, he should faithfully carry out God's commandments, and only then pray to God that he should make his efforts successful. It may well be that God will make fountains gush forth from a dry desert, and lush crops spring forth from a barren land. Whatever splendor and glory one is accorded in this life, these things in themselves do not signify that one is considered fit by God for the leadership of mankind. Everything given to man is a means of testing him, and there is no one who is exempt from God's trial. Leadership indicates that one has been selected by God to represent him in the nations of the world, and it is only for those who have been found fit by God to represent his divine religion on earth.
And remember, Abraham and Ismail raised the foundations of the house with this prayer: Our Lord, accept this service from us, for thou art the all-hearing, the all-knowing.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 128 for the Tafsir.
Lord, make of us Muslims bowing to thy will, and of our progeny a people Muslim bowing to thy will, and show us our place for the celebration of due rites, and turn unto us in mercy, for thou art the oft-returning most merciful.
God ordained that a universal center of Islamic dawah be established in Hijj, as Almighty God chose Abraham and his family to establish the center and make provision for its functioning. The words which Abraham and Ishmael uttered when they were building the house of God in Makkah were, in addition to being supplications to God, an indication of their unwavering fidelity to God's scheme of things. It is prayer of this kind that is most pleasing to God. So he accepted their prayer, and a permanent fountain of spiritual life for the whole world gushed forth from the barren desert of Arabia. The name of this fountain was Islam. As for the people who inhabited this desert, the offspring of Ishmael, God made them enthusiastic proponents of the Islamic cause. He enabled them to propagate his word far and wide. Through them, he informed mankind how they should please their Lord, so that he might turn to them in mercy. It was to the children of Ishmael that the final prophet was sent, and for the first time in history, the entire prophetic pattern was recorded for posterity, so that future generations could follow it.
Our Lord, send amongst them a messenger of their own, who shall rehearse thy signs to them and instruct them in scripture and wisdom, and sanctify them, for thou art the exalted in might, the wise.
The first and foremost task of God's messenger is to interpret his signs, which are proofs of his greatness and power. God has introduced innumerable signs into human nature, as well as into the outside world, to enable human beings to know their Creator. But these signs have to be unveiled by God's messenger. He shares his divine insight with them so that they may have a glimpse of God's glory.
And who turns away from the religion of Abraham, but such as debase their souls with folly? Him we chose and rendered pure in this world, and he will be in the hereafter in the ranks of the righteous.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 131 for the Tafsir.
Behold, his Lord said to him, Bow thy will to me, he said, I bow my will to the Lord and cherisher of the universe.
The message taught by the Prophet Muhammad was exactly the same as had been taught by Abraham. But those people of the book, who prided themselves on being followers of Abraham, led the opposition against the Prophet. Why did they act in this manner? The reason was that the religion that the Prophet taught, and which Abraham had taught before him, was the religion of Islam. Now, Islam means total submission to God, and it was this religion that Abraham handed down to his offspring. But the religion that the people of the book practiced had nothing to do with total submission to God. Having lapsed into permissiveness and unwilling to change this lifestyle, they had allowed their religion to degenerate into a series of hollow rituals, which they fondly believed would make it easy for them to enter paradise. In the religion that the Prophet Muhammad taught, however, one could gain salvation only by virtue of one's actions. The people of the book, for their part, thought that their affiliation to a nation of saints and prophets would be sufficient to earn them redemption. There was a world of difference then between Islam, the true religion of Abraham, and the religion that the people of the book practiced and attributed to him. True religion means acceptance of divine guidance, as revealed to man through the prophets, whereas the religion practiced by the people of the book was based on their own national legacy, a collection of national traditions which had accumulated over generations.
And this was the legacy that Abraham left to his sons, and so did Jacob. O my sons, Allah hath chosen the faith for you, then die not except in the faith of Islam.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 134 for the Tafsir.
Were you witnesses when death appeared before Jacob? Behold, he said to his sons, What will ye worship after me? They said, We shall worship thy God and the God of thy fathers, of Abraham, Ismail and Isaac, the one true Allah, to him we bow in Islam.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 134 for the Tafsir.
That was a people that hath passed away. They shall reap the fruit of what they did, and ye of what ye do. Of their merits there is no question in your case.
Attaching oneself to saints and prophets, living or dead, lulls one into a false sense of security. It leads one to imagine that just as one has been attached to them in this life, one will remain attached to them in the next. It makes one feel that their surplus of good deeds will make up for one's own shortcomings. The people of the book were immersed in this form of wishful thinking to the extent that they had invented a dogma of ancestral salvation, pinning all their hopes on the holiness of their elders. But it is sheer self-deception to think that one person will receive the reward of another's actions. In reality, everyone will reap the rewards and bear the burden of punishment for his own actions. No one will be made to share in the reward or punishment which is awarded to another by virtue of his actions on earth. One who submits to God finds that he has to face all kinds of difficulties in this life. His worldly hopes and ambitions will not necessarily be fulfilled. Yet one who is firm in the faith will not be put off by adversity. He will persevere, making sure that he leaves this world as a believer so that he can look forward to God's blessings in the next world.
They say, become Jews or Christians if ye would be guided to salvation. Say thou, nay, I would rather the religion of Abraham the true, and he joined not gods with Allah.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 136 for the Tafsir.
Say ye, we believe in Allah and the revelation given to us and to Abraham, Ismail, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and that given to Moses and Jesus, and that given to all prophets from their Lord. We make no difference between one and another of them, and we bow to Allah in Islam.
The religion that the Prophet Muhammad taught was the religion of the Prophet Abraham, the very religion to which the Jews and the Christians claimed allegiance. Why was it then that they turned away from the Prophet Muhammad? The reason for this was that the religion brought by the Prophet taught people to take on the hue of God, to devote themselves to him entirely. With the people of the book, religion had a different meaning. For them, religion was reduced to a symbol of national pride. The message brought by the Prophet hurt their pride, so they turned against him. Those who consider their own race superior to others cannot accept the truth when it manifests itself in some nation other than their own. They would believe in prophets who came from amongst their own people, but not in those who appeared among other people outside their own community. The only personalities that they acknowledged were those who belonged to their own race. Those who look at religion as worship of God, on the other hand, recognize the truth of every piece of wisdom that God sends down, no matter who teaches it. For the theologians to realize that the Prophet was God's final messenger was not a matter of insuperable difficulty. There was nothing to prevent them from seeing the truth of his religion. They should have proclaimed what deep down in their hearts they knew to be true, but they did not accept him as the final prophet, as was enjoined by God, for the simple reason that they were more concerned about their own position and prestige. Just as the people of old received their just deserts as individuals, so will latter-day generations receive what they merit on their own account, for truth is an individual, not an ancestral matter. The mistake of the people of the book was to think that contemporary and succeeding generations would be rewarded for the good deeds of their ancestors. The idea of original sin held by Christians implied that sins were handed down from one generation to the next. Such beliefs have no basis in truth. Everyone will be rewarded by God according to his or her own personal actions. No one can be held responsible for the deeds of others.
So if they believe as ye believe, they are indeed on the right path. But if they turn back, it is they who are in schism, but Allah will suffice thee as against them, and he is the all-hearing, the all-knowing.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 141 for the Tafsir.
Our religion is the baptism of Allah, and who can baptize better than Allah? And it is he whom we worship.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 141 for the Tafsir.
Say, will you dispute with us about Allah, seeing that he is our Lord and your Lord, that we are responsible for our doings and ye for yours, and that we are sincere in our faith in him?
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 141 for the Tafsir.
Or do you say that Abraham, Ismail, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes were Jews or Christians? Say, do you know better than Allah? Who is more unjust than those who conceal the testimony they have from Allah? But Allah is not unmindful of what ye do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 141 for the Tafsir.
That was a people that hath passed away. They shall reap the fruit of what they did, and ye of what ye do. Of their merits there is no question in your case.
If faith is to be of the kind which pleases God, it must be identical with that of the companions of the Prophet. What was so special about that faith was that it amounted to acceptance of the truth on an abstract level. It was belief in truth for the sake of truth. This had become a rarity in a society which, revering the words of the ancient prophets, regarded as truth whatever had been sanctified by centuries-old tradition. Continued belief in such truth, embellished as it was by myth and legend, became a matter of national pride. To regard it in any other light would have been to deny a great legacy from the past. Unlike the ancient prophets, who were great figures, eulogized in their nation's history, the Prophet Muhammad came afresh to the world with no accumulation of tradition behind him to lend weight to his words. When truth stands on its own, unsupported by history or tradition, as it was in the time of the Prophet, those who accept it do so for the pure and simple reason that it is the truth. This is the kind of belief that God recognizes and accepts. This is true faith. Only faith of such strength and purity is acceptable to God.
The fools among the people will say, "What hath turned them from the Qibla to which they were used?" Say, to Allah belong both east and west. He guideth whom he will to a way that is straight.
The Qibla is the direction which Muslims face when praying. This direction has to do with the form, rather than the reality of worship. A Qibla is appointed so that prayer may assume an organized pattern. God can change it as he pleases, for in whichever direction one turns, one faces him. The direction that he lays down is the one that we should face in our prayer, irrespective of what direction it may be. Before the coming of Islam, people had prayed towards Jerusalem. This old Qibla had come to be thought of as sacred and inviolable. In the second year after the Prophet's emigration to Medina, he was commanded to alter the direction of prayer and face Makkah instead of Jerusalem. Some people found this change difficult to accept. How, they thought, could another place be the Qibla when Jerusalem had held this position for time immemorial? The opponents of Islam used the change of the Qibla as an excuse to spread all sorts of rumors about the Prophet. Previous prophets have always faced Jerusalem in their prayer, they said. How is it that this prophet has gone against them? This goes to show that the only purpose of his mission is to spite the Jews. Some poured scorn on Muhammad's claim to prophethood. He seems to be in two minds about his own mission, they said. Sometimes he faces Jerusalem, sometimes Makkah. Others said, well, if the Kaaba in Mecca is the real Qibla, then all the prayers which Muslims have made facing towards Jerusalem have been wasted. These were the sort of objections that the Prophet's opponents made. True believers, those who were not caught up in the externals of religion, did not let such things disturb them. They realized that it was not the direction of prayer that really mattered, but God's commandment. God could lay down any Qibla whenever he liked. Whatever he prescribed should be followed. The commandment regarding the change of Qibla was revealed 17 months after the Prophet's emigration to Medina. The Prophet was praying with a group of his companions at the time. As soon as God's commandment was revealed, all of them turned, still praying, from Jerusalem to Mecca, a 160-degree turn from northwest to south.
Thus have we made of you an ummah justly balanced, that ye might be witnesses over the nations, and the messenger a witness over yourselves, and we appointed the Qibla to which thou wast used, only to test those who followed the messenger from those who would turn on their heels from the faith. Indeed, it was a change momentous, except to those guided by Allah, and never would Allah make your faith of no effect. For Allah is to all people most surely full of kindness, most merciful.
Acting as intermediaries, the prophets used to receive guidance from God and convey it to the people. This process continued for thousands of years until the arrival of the Prophet Muhammad, with whom the chain of prophethood ended. But even after the end of the prophethood, the conveying of God's message to the people had and still has to be continued. Generation after generation, innumerable people are born, and before they die, they must be told about the reality of life and the divine commandments. After the death of the Prophet, this responsibility had to be discharged by the Muslims. Now, with the end of the prophethood, the entire Muslim community stands between God and the people, a position formerly occupied by the prophets. This is not a reward for superiority, but a massive responsibility, so that all of the Muslim social and community-based planning must of necessity be door-oriented. Muslims should be most eager to carry out this mission, should make it their principal goal and be ready to sacrifice their all for it. The change of Qibla was a sign that God had removed the children of Israel from their position of spiritual leadership and appointed in their place the followers of Muhammad. Now the Kaaba shall remain, until the end of time, the rallying point for the call of divine religion, a center for all true believers in God, with Muslims acting as a middle nation, al-Wasat, or intermediaries between God and man. It is for them to communicate the word of God to their fellow human beings, just as the Prophet had done in his time. This is a responsibility which is eternally incumbent upon the Muslim community. Their success in this world and in the hereafter depends upon how effectively they discharge it.
We see the turning of thy face for guidance to the heavens. Now shall we turn thee to a qibla that shall please thee. Turn then thy face in the direction of the sacred mosque. Wherever ye are, turn your faces in that direction. The people of the book know well that that is the truth from their Lord. Nor is Allah unmindful of what they do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 145 for the Tafsir.
Even if thou wert to bring to the people of the book all the signs together, they would not follow thy qibla, nor art thou going to follow their qibla, nor indeed will they follow each other's qibla. If thou after the knowledge hath reached thee, wert to follow their vain desires, then wert thou indeed clearly in the wrong.
Not until the Prophet Muhammad received divine revelation on a particular matter did he change the pattern of previous prophets. Faithful to this principle, he initially made Jerusalem his prayer direction, or the Qibla, for prophets since the time of Solomon had prayed in that direction. The coming of Islam signaled the removal of the Jews from their position as torchbearers of the true faith. The true faith had also to be separated and made distinct from Jewish tradition so that it could appear in a new and unmistakably pure form. For this reason, the Prophet eagerly awaited instructions to change the Qibla. In the second year after his emigration to Medina, he received the commandment. The prophets who hailed from among the Jewish people had been informed that one day God would alter the Qibla, and they had passed the knowledge unto the Jews. It was something, therefore, that Jewish theologians should have expected, yet only a few of them, such as Abdullah ibn Salam and Makarik, confirmed the authenticity of this commandment and acknowledged that God had revealed the truth through the Prophet Muhammad. The reason for the majority's refusal to follow the Prophet was the fact that they were used to behave as they wished. They had certain romantic notions about the special position occupied by their own people, and they had made these the bedrock of their life and creed. Those who give free rein to their own desires will never follow the path of reason. In their perversity, they want the kind of satisfaction from the denial of God's signs, which God would have wished them to derive from their acceptance.
The people of the book know this as they know their own sons, but some of them conceal the truth which they themselves know.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 147 for the Tafsir.
The truth is from thy Lord, so be not at all in doubt.
Whenever God reveals some truth to the world, it is supported by clear arguments. No one can then fail to recognize it to be the truth. Those who do not make the truth their own show that they had never realized God, for if they had, they would have recognized His word when they heard it. Those who find words to reject the truth think that they have discovered strong arguments to justify their stand. They think that they are standing on firm logical ground. But very soon they realize that those words were nothing but imaginary props, which they themselves had devised to give false satisfaction to their egos.
To each is a goal to which Allah turns him, then strive together as in a race toward all that is good. Wheresoever ye are, Allah will bring you together, for Allah hath power over all things.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 150 for the Tafsir.
Whencesoever thou startest forth, turn thy face in the direction of the sacred mosque, that is indeed the truth from the Lord. And Allah is not unmindful of what ye do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 150 for the Tafsir.
So from whencesoever thou startest forth, turn thy face in the direction of the sacred mosque, and wheresoever ye are, turn your face thither, that there be no ground of dispute against you among the people, except those of them that are bent on wickedness. So fear them not, but fear me, and that I may complete my favors on you, and ye may consent to be guided.
When the Kaaba in Mecca was appointed as the prayer direction, or Qibla, the people of the book started discussing whether the east was God's direction or the west. They saw the matter as one of direction alone, but this was nothing other than sheer ignorance on their part. The selection of the house of God as the Qibla was not merely the specification of a certain direction for prayer. It was a sign that the time had come for God to reveal His greatest favor to man. It had been decided a long time ago that in answer to the prayer of Abraham and Ishmael, C2 129, God would send the final prophet to the world. The path to life everlasting was now being thrown open to all. God was showing his ultimate favor to mankind. The bringing of religion to its final stage of perfection in Islam does not mean that previous religions were incomplete. They too were complete in themselves, but none of them was preserved in its original and authentic form. God had revealed true religion time and time again, but on each occasion mankind had rebelled against it and either distorted it or allowed it to fall into oblivion. Now it was revealed in its ultimate and indelible form. Divine religion that had deteriorated into a set of mythological tales was now incorporated into history in the form of solid facts. Up till then, no pattern of true religion had been preserved for posterity. Now, it was placed before mankind in a permanent, living and practical form. The change of Qibla, rather than denoting a change from one direction of worship to another, more sacred one, showed the completion of God's guidance to mankind.
A similar favor have ye already received in that we have sent among you a messenger of your own, rehearsing to you our signs, and sanctifying you, and instructing you in scripture and wisdom, and in new knowledge.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 152 for the Tafsir.
Then do ye remember me, I will remember you. Be grateful to me, and reject not faith.
It was at the time of the construction of the Kaaba that Abraham and Ishmael prayed for a prophet to be born among the people of Makkah. The prayer was answered, and the coming of the final prophet, whose focus would be Makkah, was decreed. God's messengers who came to the world used to prophesy his coming. Now that he had come, the Kaaba in Mecca was made the prayer direction for all nations. This was God's sign, indicating that the prophet, whose coming had been anticipated, had finally arrived. As for the sincere, they needed no further proof. But even the conclusiveness of this sign was not enough to silence those who gave no thought to God. It is those who fear God who are guided on the path to him. God remembers those who remember him. Only those who are filled with fear of him are free of fear of all else besides him.
O ye who believe! Seek help with patient perseverance and prayer, for Allah is with those who patiently persevere.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 155 for the Tafsir.
And say not of those who are slain in the way of Allah, they are dead. Nay, they are living, though ye perceive it not.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 155 for the Tafsir.
Sure we shall test you with something of fear and hunger, some loss in goods or lives or the fruits of your toil, but give glad tidings to those who patiently persevere.
One who has adopted religion in the real sense of the word has truly discovered God. He lives in a permanent state of thanksgiving and remembrance of his Lord. Such a life alone is a source of peace and happiness. But peace and happiness will materialize in their complete form only in the next eternal world. This world has not been created for reward, it has been created for the trial of man. This world being a testing ground. God's servants face obstacles in their path so that the earnest among them may be distinguished from those who are not serious and sincere. These obstacles present themselves in normal, everyday situations of life, human temptations, family demands, worldly interests, social pressure. These are the things that provide the real test of life. First, one has to realize in what manner one is being tested. Then one has to avoid the pitfalls by remembering God and thanking him for the blessings of life. There is only one way to succeed in the trials of life, and that is through patience and prayer. This entails attaching oneself to God and conscientiously adhering to the path of truth, enduring all the setbacks that afflict one on the way. Those who do not waver from the path despite all the difficulties it presents, who stay with God even when no worldly benefit seems to accrue therefrom, are the ones who will finally emerge successful from the trials of life. God has reserved the eternal blessings of the next life for those who show themselves willing to sacrifice this life for the next. A preacher of truth has to make the greatest sacrifices in the path of God. Suffering and affliction are his lot because of his hearers' negative response to the criticism and admonition, which are inseparable parts of such preaching. There are few in this world who are willing to be reproved and warned. The sincere preacher also incurs the animosity of mercenary individuals who are doing brisk business in the name of religion. The sincerity of the true preacher becomes a threat to the status of hypocrites, therefore they turn hostile to the preacher. Becoming a preacher of God's word, then, is tantamount to putting one's hand into a fire. One who takes this task upon himself is exposing himself to prejudice, economic ruin, and even expulsion from his own land. He is placing both his life and his property in the utmost peril. It is inevitable that one who follows God's path is persecuted in this world. But it is those who lose all for God's sake who are the true finders. It is those who give their lives for Him who inherit life everlasting. For those who do not seek to make their paradise in this ephemeral world, God has prepared an eternal paradise in the next.
Who say, when afflicted with calamity, to Allah we belong, and to Him is our return.
On the death of a loved one goes in a state of prayerfulness, deep thinking and contemplation. The experience reminds him that there is very little time at his disposal, and that at any moment death can come calling. However, we are so involved in worldly things that we never stop to think about the day which is fast approaching us. The Prophet Muhammad said, "People are asleep. They will wake up only when they die." All of a sudden, death will bring you standing face to face with God, at which time you will be held accountable for all your deeds. That will be the moment you realize that what you were doing was one thing, and that what you should have been doing was quite another. The Prophet Muhammad once said that on the day of judgment, a man's foot would not move unless he had answered 4 questions: where he earned his money from, and where he spent it, how he spent his youth, and how he used his knowledge. The Creator has divided human life into 2 parts, the pre-death and post-death periods. The pre-death period is very short, like the tip of an iceberg, in comparison to the post-death period, which is eternal. The pre-death period is the preparatory phase in which you prepare yourself to become eligible to enter paradise in the post-death period. This worldly life is a test for everyone, whether poor or rich, powerful or powerless, strong or weak. Man is required to pass in all these tests and trials by leading a need-based life rather than a desire and greed-based life, so that in the life hereafter, God will allow him to enter paradise, to live there forever in close proximity to his Creator. On the death of a loved one should not go into a state of mourning. The Quran gives us great hope in moments of grief and loss. It says that God will reunite all the righteous members of the family in paradise. Moreover, if a member of the family has reached a higher level of paradise, all the righteous members of that family will be upgraded, so that they may all enjoy eternal bliss and nearness to God. This idea gives great solace, and it acts as an incentive and encouragement to do good work and lead a pious and righteous life. The Prophet Muhammad said that when a man dies, everything connected with him is cut off except 3 things: continuous charity, knowledge from which benefit is derived, and virtuous children who pray for him.
They are those on whom descend blessings from Allah and mercy, and they are the ones that receive guidance.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 158 for the Tafsir.
Behold, Safa and Marwa are among the symbols of Allah. So if those who visit the house in the season or at other times should compass them round, it is no sin in them. And if anyone obeyeth his own impulse to good, be sure that Allah is He who recognizeth and knoweth.
Prophet Abraham was a native of Iraq. Acting at God's behest, he took his wife Hajar and his infant son Ishmael and left them in the place now known as Makkah. There was no habitation there at that time, and there was no water. Thirst forced Hajar to go far afield in search of water. Distressed, she ran back and forth between the hills of Safa and Marwa. After 7 unsuccessful attempts, she returned to her dwelling. There she found a spring, now known as the Spring of Zamzam, flowing from the ground. This was a symbolic event, showing us how Almighty God looks after His servants. If one persists in the service of God, finally reaching a stage where there is nothing but burning sand beneath one's feet, then God in His mercy will cause a refreshing spring to gush forth from the dryness of the desert sands. When Muslims perform the pilgrimage to Mecca, they repeat Hajar's historic quest between these hills, thus commemorating the profound relevance of the event to everyone who struggles in the path of God. Bad signs were displayed so clearly in the Prophet Muhammad's life and teachings that it was not difficult to see that he had been sent by God. Yet the Jewish intelligentsia denied him. They were prevented from believing in him by the fear that if they accepted an Arab prophet, their religious hegemony would come to an end. People would stop looking up to the Jews as their leaders. Old established religious traditions and the interests which had come to be associated with them, the Jews being the main beneficiaries, would be destroyed. They deemed it wise to conceal the truth, for they thought that they would lose their worldly status were they to accept it. But it would have been much wiser for them to have proclaimed it. They forgot that God's servants are required to put truth before their worldly interests. One who becomes destitute for the sake of the Lord gains succor from the inexhaustible treasures of divine grace. The doors of God's mercy are always open to His servants. He will always forgive one who comes to his senses and mends his erring ways, proclaiming the truth as God wishes it to be proclaimed. Only those who persevere in their disbelief till the day they die will be deprived of His mercy.
Those who conceal the clear signs we have sent down, and the guidance, after we have made it clear for the people in the book, on them shall be Allah's curse, and the curse of those entitled to curse.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 163, for the Tafsir.
Except those who repent and make amends and openly declare the truth, to them I turn, for I am oft returning, most merciful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 163, for the Tafsir.
Those who reject faith and die rejecting, on them is Allah's curse, and the curse of angels, and of all mankind.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 163, for the Tafsir.
They will abide therein, their penalty will not be lightened, nor will respite be their lot.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 163, for the Tafsir.
And your Allah is one Allah, there is no God but He, most gracious, most merciful.
Mankind has only one God. He is the only worthy focus of man's attention. Our very existence on earth, and all the benefits we derive from the world around us, are manifestations of His unbounded grace and mercy. In return, we should become God's devoted servants, living for Him, dying for Him, and setting all our hopes on winning His eternal favor. Man owes everything to his Creator. If he becomes conscious of this, his Lord will mean everything to him, as a mother means everything to her infant.
Behold, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, in the alternation of the night and the day, in the sailing of the ships through the ocean for the profit of mankind, in the rain which Allah sends down from the skies, and the life which He gives therewith to an earth that is dead, in the beasts of all kinds that He scatters through the earth, in the change of the winds, and the clouds which they trail like their slaves between the sky and the earth, here indeed are signs for a people that are wise.
The vast universe spread out before us serves as a magnificent introduction to God. The existence of a limitless world in the form of the earth and the heavens is a proof that there must be a Creator behind it. Despite apparently different and contrasting elements, all things work together in absolute harmony, showing that their Creator and Sustainer is the one and only God. Then the fact that every single thing benefits the rest of the universe in some manner or the other shows that all things have been designed according to a definite and absolutely conscious plan. Apparently lifeless objects are invested with life through a natural process. This shows that death is only a temporary phase in this universe. Here death is always followed by new life. Every variety of animate creature flourishes in this world in huge numbers. All are being sustained by varied forms of the same food and drink, indicating the unfathomable power of God. The atmosphere totally encompassing the earth shows that man's life is entirely in his Creator's hands. Everything in this universe has been tamed to cater to man's needs. This is indicative of the fact that man's Creator is a highly compassionate being. Even before an individual has been born into the world, all his requirements have already been taken care of. The presence of all these signs in the universe are reflections of the Creator and His creation. The universe displays God's very existence and His oneness on a vast scale. It is an amalgam of every aspect of perfection, so that no one with any vision or even a grain of intelligence can fail to discover Him in it. But these signs, spread all over the universe, serve as proofs of God's existence and His role as sustainer of the entire universe, only to one who sincerely reflects on these signs. For to be able to arrive at the truth, one has to be sincere in one's search for it, and one has to rise above worldly considerations before drawing one's conclusions. This can be achieved only by total absorption, not in externals, but in the search for the inner reality that lies beneath the outward surface of things.
Yet there are men who take for worship others besides Allah, as equal with Allah. They love them as they should love Allah, but those of faith are overflowing in their love for Allah. If only the unrighteous could see, behold, they would see the penalty that to Allah belongs all power, and Allah will strongly enforce the penalty.
By their nature and circumstances, human beings always look for an external supportive being who may compensate for their feelings of helplessness, and may serve as a source of confidence and conviction. To make someone a part of one's life in this capacity is akin to accepting that being as a deity. When a being or an object is taken as a deity, it is assumed to be someone or something worthy of being worshipped. It necessarily entails that all one's feelings of love and devotion become exclusively reserved for that being or object. Their own nature compels human beings to have some focus for all their feelings of love, devotion, and reverence. And whatever becomes the focus of these emotions is held to be God. That is, the object has been accorded the status of divinity. Since God remains invisible in this present world, one who judges things by appearances tends to accord some visible being the status due only to the Almighty. Such beings are generally leaders who, because of certain marks of distinction, become the center of public attention. This vacuum in human nature was in actual fact to be filled by God Almighty, but many people chose something or someone other than God for this purpose. This happens when ordinary human beings, seeing someone surrounded by visible pomp and splendor, are impressed by certain special talents or qualities, when they find certain individuals occupying seats sanctified by centuries-old traditions, when at times they are impressed by the large following which certain people enjoy, and when they see public figures surrounded with the halo of mysterious legends. Being ordinary mortals themselves, they come thus to regard certain persons as possessing extraordinary power and therefore superior to the common man. But the truth is that in this universe of God, no one save God possesses any power or greatness. Men may continue to receive the status of divinity only for so long as God remains invisible. But when God appears on doomsday, the state of affairs will change so drastically that people will flee from one another. Today people take great pride in their association with and devotion to great men. They think that they are clinging to a firm rock which will surely help them in the hereafter. Such association will prove meaningless on doomsday, as if they had never existed at all. Man will look at his past life in despair, but he will be utterly helpless to rectify the situation. He will be able to do nothing but regret his past deeds.
Then would those who are followed clear themselves of those who follow them. They would see the penalty, and all relations between them would be cut off.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 170 for the Tafsir.
And those who followed would say, if only we had one more chance, we would clear ourselves of them, as they have cleared themselves of us. Thus will Allah show them the fruits of their deeds as nothing but regrets, nor will there be a way for them out of the fire.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 170 for the Tafsir.
O ye people! Eat of what is on earth, lawful and good, and do not follow the footsteps of the evil one, for he is to you an avowed enemy.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 170 for the Tafsir.
For he commands you what is evil and shameful, and that ye should say of Allah that of which ye have no knowledge.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 170 for the Tafsir.
When it is said to them, follow what Allah hath revealed, they say, nay, we shall follow the ways of our fathers. But, even though their fathers were void of wisdom and guidance.
What is polytheism? It is the worship of something other than God in order to satisfy one's feelings of devotion and veneration. God is the greatest and most essential need of man. The urge to worship God is so integral to human nature that no one can live without him. Man's going astray does not mean that he abandons God altogether. What actually happens is that the real God is replaced by a false God. That is why the Islamic law holds unlawful all those things which, in any degree, lead to deviation, i.e. diverting man's natural desire for God in some other direction. The polytheists set certain animals free in the name of their deities. These animals are not used for food or service. This is akin to according divinity to an object, a divinity which is a prerogative of none save God. It is akin to diluting men's natural feelings of reverence and devotions meant only for God, and which should be exclusively reserved for God alone. Satan encourages human beings to channelize their feelings of awe and reverence onto different paths in order that their attachment to God may be weakened.
The parable of those who reject faith is as if one were to shout like a goat, herd, to things that listen to nothing but calls and cries, deaf, dumb, and blind, they are void of wisdom.
Once an object, which is not God, is accepted as God as a result of man's superstitious attitude, many other accompanying evils ensue. An animal may come to be regarded as possessing supernatural power or something possessed only by God. That animal is then held to be a means of achieving proximity to God, and is expected to be a source of blessings. In the next generation, all these superstitious beliefs become firmly rooted in the human psyche, and are upheld with great zeal and fervor as the sacred way of the forefathers. At this stage, people become resistant to any rational analysis of these superstitious beliefs. The situation deteriorates further with succeeding generations. People reach a level where they are totally unable to hear or understand any argument put forward to them. They act as if they have neither eyes nor ears to see and hear, nor brains to give thought to any argument presented to them.
O ye who believe, eat of the good things that we have provided for you, and be grateful to Allah, if it is Him ye worship.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 173, for the Tafsir.
He hath only forbidden you dead meat, and blood, and the flesh of swine, and that on which any other name hath been invoked besides that of Allah. But if one is forced by necessity, without willful disobedience, nor transgressing due limits, then is he guiltless. For Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful.
Human beings should feel thankful and obedient to God while eating food and drinking water. They should express themselves thus, in accordance with God's commandment. We are eating and drinking what God has provided us with. These emotions evoke in a man the feeling of true devotion to his Maker. But this psychological makeup changes in the case of self-styled beliefs. In that case, man's attention is diverted to the supposed properties of the things he consumes. Therefore, the same divine blessing which is meant to produce feelings of thanksgiving evoke instead feelings of veneration for material objects. Under the influence of such false beliefs, man comes to accord the position of creator to the created. If something is held unlawful by God, it is not owing to the sacredness of that thing, but rather because it is something impure or the divine law has testified to its uncleanness, e.g. carrion, blood, swine, or an animal sacrificed in the name of some idol instead of in the name of God. In cases of extreme necessity where a man's life may be at stake, he may eat food otherwise forbidden. For instance, when suffering extreme hunger and when no other food is available, or an illness, or other such circumstances as may compel him to do so. However, it is essential that such forbidden food should not be taken simply for the pleasure of the palate. That is, one must remain within the bare limits of necessity.
Those who conceal Allah's revelations in the book and purchase for them a miserable profit, they swallow into themselves naught but fire. Allah will not address them on the day of resurrection, nor purify them. Grievous will be their penalty.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 176, for the Tafsir.
They are the ones who buy error in place of guidance and torment in place of forgiveness. What boldness they show for the fire!
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 176, for the Tafsir.
Their doom is because Allah sent down the book in truth, but those who seek causes of dispute in the book are in a schism far from the purpose.
When superstitious beliefs about prohibitions have been accepted by the masses as religious beliefs and held sacred, the religious scholars of the community fail to muster enough courage to declare openly that those beliefs have nothing to do with true religion, for they are afraid that if they did so, they would be severing themselves from the general public to whom they owe their popularity. They may revel in such compromises as bring them wealth and honor, but in the eyes of God, they are the worst offenders. Hiding the truth for worldly considerations is not one of those offenses that God will ignore in the hereafter. These are in fact crimes that deprive men of God's mercy. Worse still are those who, instead of accepting the truth when it is presented to them, start engaging in meaningless discussions. They develop a propensity to divisiveness, and ultimately they stray so far from the truth that there remains no chance of their returning.
It is not righteousness that ye turn your faces toward east or west, but it is righteousness to believe in Allah and the last day, and the angels, and the book, and the messengers, to spend of your substance out of love for Him, for your kin, for orphans, for the needy, for the wafer, for those who ask, and for the ransom of slaves, to be steadfast in prayer, and practice regular charity, to fulfill the contracts which ye have made, and to be firm and patient, in pain or suffering in adversity, and throughout all periods of panic. Such are the people of truth, the Allah-fearing.
There is no doubt that there are certain accepted forms of religious conduct, but in essence, a religious act is aimed at discovering God as the light of the earth and the heavens, one who is closer to man than his jugular vein. What brings man closer to God is not the mere adherence to outward religious forms, but such actions as he performs in total sincerity, for the sake of God alone. Man must discover God in a way that he becomes a part and parcel of his being. All his actions must aim at earning God's pleasure. His attachment to God should be so great that, even in the most trying circumstances, he must not waver from the straight path. In short, the Almighty's pleasure can be earned only by displaying true faithfulness and not just by turning our faces in one or the other direction. Believing in God is to trust in God in the full sense of the word. Believing in the hereafter means giving the utmost importance to the life of the hereafter instead of to the life of this world. Believing in the angels means believing in God's emissaries who are running this world at the divine command. Believing in the book means believing that God has sent his guidance for man, which man must follow. Believing in the prophets is to accept these mortals as God's chosen messengers. The faith in all these matters must so deeply pervade the believer's psyche that he helps the needy and others in distress by spending his wealth, says his prayers by surrendering himself totally to God, and pays the poor due, his only motivation being to earn God's pleasure. One of the characteristics of a true believer is that when he enters into a contract, he fulfills it, treating it as if he has entered into a covenant with God. His trust in God is so great, even in the most dire of circumstances, that he always adheres to the godly path. These are the characteristics of a true believer. One who possesses these qualities will earn God's blessing in this world as well as in the hereafter.
O ye who believe! The law of equality is prescribed to you in cases of murder, the free for the free, the slave for the slave, the woman for the woman. But if any remission is made by the brother of the slain, then grant any reasonable demand, and compensate him with handsome gratitude. This is a concession and a mercy from your Lord. After this, whoever exceeds the limits shall be in grave penalty.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 179 for the Tafsir.
In the law of equality there is saving of life to you, O ye men of understanding, that ye may restrain yourselves.
Islam has laid down the principle of retaliation in like measure. Cases, for example, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Retribution for a killer means the forfeiture of his own life. In this way, on the one hand, a capital crime like the taking of life is effectively discouraged, for the fear of losing one's own life deters one from taking another's life, and, as a result, the life of all the members of a society become protected. The killing of the killer guarantees the saving of lives in a society. Thus the objective of cases is the protection of the members of society, and not revenge. Moreover, the vengeful feelings of the family of the murdered person are cooled, thus obviating the possibility of any further injurious activity. However, cases in Islam permits a settlement to be arrived at between the killer and the killed. The heirs of the deceased person may, of course, opt for the execution of the killer, but they may also, if they so wish, accept blood, money instead, or even forgive him. The main aim of these alternatives is to guarantee the prevalence of brotherly feeling in Islamic society, and to prevent an atmosphere of rivalry taking root. Then the principle of blood money has the special advantage of giving the bereaved family monetary compensation for the death of one of its members.
It is prescribed, when death approaches any of you, if he leave any goods that he make a bequest to parents and next of kin, according to reasonable usage, this is due from the Allah, fearing.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 182 for the Tafsir.
If anyone changes the bequest after hearing it, the guilt shall be on those who make the change. For Allah hears and knows all things.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 182 for the Tafsir.
But if anyone fears partiality or wrong doing on the part of the testator and makes peace between the parties concerned, there is no wrong in him, for Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful.
After someone's death, the problem arises as to how to deal with his or her wealth. The Islamic injunction in this regard is to distribute it in a just and equitable manner to the heirs. One who fears God should follow this injunction regarding the disposal of intestate property in the spirit of justice. This will create a brotherly atmosphere in society, preventing litigation and quarrels over property. Where there is a member of a family, like an orphan grandson, or any other needy member of the family who does not inherit under the Islamic inheritance scheme, the testator may provide for him, as he has been given the power to dispose of up to 1/3 of his property by making a will in his favor. Islam approves of every lawful device for keeping society free from litigation and quarrels. But unless this is the objective, the changing of the provisions of a will is unlawful.
O ye who believe! Fasting is prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, that ye may learn self-restraint.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 184 for the Tafsir.
Fasting for a fixed number of days, but if any of you is ill, or on a journey, the prescribed number should be made up from days later. For those who can do it with hardship is a ransom, the feeding of one that is indigent. But he that will give more of his own free will, it is better for him, and it's better for you that ye fast, if ye only knew.
The main aim of fasting is to reduce man's dependence on material things and strengthen his spiritual resolve, so that he may enter the higher realms of faith and piety. In this way, fasting during Ramadan is a unique opportunity to concentrate on doing good and abstaining from evil. The heart of the believer is thus gladdened and his mind is set at rest. Although the fast is prescribed for just 1 month every year, the spirit of fasting is far more enduring. It brings man closer to God by showing him how to withdraw from the world while still being a part of it. It shows man the way to fulfill his spiritual obligations in the turmoil of the materialistic world. In that sense, fasting during Ramadan is a way of attaining peace of mind. Ramadan is the month of heightened God consciousness, of attaining piety and training ourselves to be the best possible human beings. Instead of indulging in gossiping, lying, slandering, and generally exhibiting all other traits of bad character, one is focused on improving one's character by cultivating good habits. In doing so, the believer's inner self inches closer day by day towards a state of righteousness, worshipfulness, devotion, and piety, which elevates the soul to a condition of superior spiritual bliss. It is a path which the Prophet Muhammad himself had laid down. During Ramadan, he would engage himself in prayer and praise the Almighty throughout the day, especially while breaking the fast at sunset. Just before sunset, when the fast reaches its climax, the believer experiences closeness to his Creator. Perhaps for this reason, the Prophet Muhammad included the fasting person at the time of breaking his fast in the 5 kinds of people whose supplications were never turned down by God. The others were a just ruler, an oppressed person, a parent who prays for his children, and one who travels for the sake of God.
Ramadan is the month in which was sent down the Qur'an as a guide to mankind, also clear signs for guidance and judgment between right and wrong. So every one of you who is present at his home during that month should spend it in fasting. But if anyone is ill, or on a journey, the prescribed period should be made up by days later. Allah intends every facility for you. He does not want to put to difficulties. He wants you to complete the prescribed period and to glorify Him in that He has guided you, and perchance ye shall be grateful.
Fasting serves as training for 2 things at the same time, inculcating the spirit of thanksgiving and instilling the fear of God in the heart of the believer. Food and water are great blessings of God, yet man is incapable of attaching due importance to them. While fasting, he goes hungry and thirsty the whole day. Then at sunset, in a state of extreme hunger and thirst, he eats and drinks to his fill. He then realizes through his own experience how great are the blessings of God which are present in the form of food and water. This experience produces boundless feelings of gratitude towards his Lord. On the other hand, fasting also serves as a form of training for a God-fearing life, which entails abstaining from all kinds of sins and evil deeds which God has forbidden. A total abstention from food and drink from dawn until sunset is an exercise in making God one's guardian. The entire life of the believer is a life of fasting. During the month of Ramadan, he receives his training by temporarily abstaining from certain things, so that for the rest of his life he may permanently renounce all those things of which God disapproves. The Quran is a great blessing of God to man. It is through fasting that man enables himself to be truly thankful to God, and to lead a godly life in accordance with the teachings enshrined in the Quran.
When my servants ask thee concerning me, I am indeed close to them. I listen to the prayer of every suppliant when he calleth on me. Let them also with a will listen to my call, and believe in me, that they may walk in the right way.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 187 for the Tafsir.
Permitted to you on the night of the fasts is the approach to your wives. They are your garments, and ye are their garments. Those are limits set by Allah. Approach not nigh thereto. Thus doth Allah make clear His signs to men, that they may learn self-restraint.
Fasting by its very nature is an act of patience, and patience involves putting up with all kinds of difficulties in order to carry out God's commandments. This helps man to attain that state of mind which brings him closer to God. Only those find God who surrender themselves totally to Him. Only the words of those reach God whose wavelength matches that of God. The command to fast is followed by the command, do not consume one another's property by unjust means. See 2. 188, This shows the essence of fasting. The real aim of fasting is to create such a feeling of subservience that when God commands us to abstain from anything, we must do so forthwith. The lesson fasting gives us is that even if God wants us to stay away from lawful things, we must show no hesitation in obeying His command. Thus, one who abstains from lawful things, if God wants him to do so, will have no difficulty in abstaining from unlawful things if God so commands.
And do not eat up your property among yourselves for vanities, nor use it as bait for the judges, with intent that ye may eat up wrongfully and knowingly a little of other people's property.
Thus the life of a believer is one of renunciation. For his entire life he has to keep himself away from certain things. The month of Ramadan serves as training for this. A life of restraint during the month of fasting gives us the lesson that the true servant of God is one who worships God at the level of taqwa and lives a life of piety and fear of God. God will answer the call only of those who bring themselves closer to Him by living a life of sacrifice.
They ask thee concerning the new moons. Say, they are but signs to mark fixed periods of time in the affairs of men, and for pilgrimage. It is no virtue if ye enter your houses from the back, it is virtue if ye fear Allah. Enter houses through the proper doors, and fear Allah, that ye may prosper.
The waxing and waning of the moon are meant to serve only as measures of time. The superstitious believe that the days when the moon is waxing are auspicious, while the days of the moon's waning are inauspicious. The moon, in fact, is an almanac of nature appearing in the sky so that people may plan the timings of their worldly affairs as well as their worship. But there are many people who have come to regard mere outward observance as religiosity.
Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress limits, for Allah loveth not transgressors.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 191, for the Tafsir.
And slay them wherever ye catch them, and turn them out from where they have turned you out, for tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter, but fight them not at the sacred mosque, unless they first fight you there, but if they fight you, slay them. Such is the reward of those who suppress faith.
The fighting title mentioned here refers to that which took place during the life of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet's Meccan opponents, not content with just expelling the Prophet and his companions from Mecca, their hometown, also prevented them from living and working peacefully in the neighboring town of Yathrib, Medina, where they had gone to settle. Without any provocation, they repeatedly attacked the Muslims, who then had to fight in self-defense. When aggression has already been committed by opponents, believers are obliged to defend themselves. Initiating hostilities is not permitted for Muslims. Only defensive war is permitted in Islam. Even defensive war has to be openly declared by an established state.
But if they cease, Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 193, for the Tafsir.
And fight them on until there is no more tumult or oppression, and there prevail justice and faith in Allah. But if they cease, let there be no hostility except to those who practice oppression.
The Quranic exhortation to do battle against religious persecution, fitna, has been explained by Abdullah ibn Umar, a senior companion of the Prophet. He said that this verse referred to the coercive religious system that prevailed in the ancient world. Fath al-Bari Bal. 8p. 60. Temporary in nature. The war against fitna was thus one of limited duration, meant to be engaged in only until its specific purpose had been served. In the wake of the Islamic Revolution, religious persecution was replaced by intellectual freedom. As Abdullah ibn Umar said, they had already put an end to fitna, therefore, except in cases where self-defense had become inevitable, the Quran did not give permission for violence.
The prohibited month for the prohibited month, and so for all things prohibited, there is the law of equality. If then any one transgresses the prohibition against you, transgress ye likewise against him. But fear Allah, and know that Allah is with those who restrain themselves.
Fighting during the sacred months, Muharram, Rajab, Dhul-Qa'dah, Dhul-Hijjah, were fighting within the precincts of Mecca is forbidden. But if opponents commit aggression in these months, believers may fight back in self-defense. But while fighting, believers must abstain from all atrocities. They should not transgress any bounds set by God, if they truly fear God even at times of great provocation as in a state of war.
And spend of your substance in the cause of Allah, and make not your own hands contribute to your destruction, but do good, for Allah loveth those who do good.
More than anything else, the struggle for the cause of God demands the expenditure of money. It is the sacrifice of wealth which man finds most difficult. That is why the Quran enjoins us to regard the cause of God as our own cause, and to spend generously for the cause of religion. If we fail to do so, we are inviting our own destruction in this world as well as in the next. If man does not surrender all that he has to God, why should God give what he has to him? Man thinks that the best use of his wealth is to spend it on himself or his family. But the Quran calls this the way to destruction. The proper use of wealth is to spend generously for the cause of religion. This will make man deserving of God's blessings. He will receive divine succor in this world and will be rewarded with paradise in the hereafter.
And complete the Hajj or Umrah in the service of Allah. But if ye are prevented from completing it, send an offering for sacrifice, such as ye may find, and do not shave your heads until the offering reaches the place of sacrifice. And if any of you is ill, or has an ailment in his scalp, necessitating shaving, he should in compensation either fast, or feed the poor, or offer sacrifice. And when ye are in peaceful conditions again, if anyone wishes to continue the Umrah on to the Hajj, he must make an offering, such as he can afford, but if he cannot afford it, he should fast 3 days during the Hajj and 7 days on his return, making 10 days in all. This is for those whose household is not in the precincts of the sacred mosque. And fear Allah, and know that Allah is strict in punishment.
The Hajj pilgrimage takes place once a year in the month of Dhul-Hijjah, whereas Umrah, the minor pilgrimage, may be performed at any time. Be it Hajj or Umrah, any worship, when performed purely for God, is valuable in the eyes of God. When the true worshipper of God undertakes a religious duty like Hajj, he spiritually experiences in its rites worship a surrender to a being whom he loves and fears more than anything else. The greatest concern of such a worshipper is to escape God's punishment in the hereafter. Thus a believer is one who lives not for the satisfaction of his desires, but for a worthy goal. His goal is to completely abstain from all that God has forbidden. He must refrain from all kinds of misdeeds and quarrels with his fellow men. The Hajj pilgrimage successfully serves the purpose of this moral training. That is why the believers are especially enjoined to undertake it. Pilgrims take provisions with them to meet their requirements during the journey. However, we are reminded that the best provision for a believer is to live in fear of God. Going in fear of God, taqwa, relates to the intellect. It has nothing to do with the observance of certain outward forms. It is, in fact, a state of heightened consciousness. When man finds his Lord at the level of the keenest awareness, his mind is filled with God's greatness and beauty. Then at the spiritual level, that state which may be described as God-fearing taqwa, or God-consciousness, is produced.
For Hajj are the months well known. If any one undertakes that duty therein, let there be no obscenity, nor wickedness, nor wrangling in the Hajj. And whatever good ye do, be sure Allah knoweth it. And take a provision with you for the journey, but the best of provisions is right conduct. So fear me, O ye that are wise.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 200 for the Tafsir.
It is no crime in you if ye seek of the bounty of your Lord during pilgrimage. Then when ye pour down from Mount Arafat, celebrate the praises of Allah at the sacred monument, and celebrate his praises as he has directed you, even though, before this, you went astray.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 200 for the Tafsir.
Then pass on at a quick pace from the place whence it is usual for the multitude so to do, and ask for Allah's forgiveness. For Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 200 for the Tafsir.
So when ye have accomplished your holy rites, celebrate the praises of Allah, as ye used to celebrate the praises of your fathers, yea, with far more heart and soul. There are men who say, Our Lord, give us thy bounties in this world, but they will have no portion in the hereafter.
Fear of God is the basic element of worship. As long as one remains in this frame of mind, it does not matter if the order of a rite is changed by mistake in performing the rites of pilgrimage, or if one attends to some private business while in the Holy Land. What is important is that one should enter into the spirit of pilgrimage, fear of God, remembrance of Him, prayerfulness, thanksgiving, and wholehearted submission to God. While on a pilgrimage, one should make sure not to do anything which runs counter to the spirit. There should be no feeling of superiority over fellow pilgrims, that is, one should press on from where the pilgrims stream forth. Making too much of one's forefathers, praising their great deeds, is also against the spirit of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage is for the glory of God, not for praise of the self. What place can such attitudes and activities have in Hajj, the very lesson of which is the equality of men before one supreme God? If one does not assimilate this lesson during the pilgrimage, what chance is there of one applying it throughout the rest of one's life?
There are men who say, Our Lord, give us good in this world and good in the hereafter, and defend us from the torment of the fire.
Prayers, especially those offered during the pilgrimage, are an outward manifestation of an inward state. Whatever one cherishes in one's heart, one expresses in prayer. One who has set his mind on worldly riches and grandeur will concentrate on little else when he prays to God, whereas one who seeks the next world, with its infinite happiness and blessings, will make this the central theme of his devotions. This prayer on the part of the believer is not a request for worldly riches. Material gain and worldly wealth are only parts of a test paper, and no one would like to pray to increase the difficulty of his test paper. This prayer is more like asking God to give him what is best for man in the eyes of God in this world, and what is best for man in the eyes of God in the hereafter. Therefore, the best prayer for man is to say to his Lord, O my God, give me in this world whatever you see is good for this world, and give me in the next life whatever you see is good for that world, and save me from eternal doom.
To these will be allotted what they have earned, and Allah is quick in account.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 203, for the Tafsir.
Celebrate the praises of Allah during the appointed days. But if anyone hastens to leave in 2 days, there is no blame on him, and if anyone stays on, there is no blame on him, if his aim is to do right. Then fear Allah, and know that you will surely be gathered unto him.
You shall be gathered before him is the greatest lesson of pilgrimage, given in the plains of Arafat, where millions of pilgrims gather annually. This gathering symbolizes a final gathering of all human beings on doomsday. Practical results are always produced by actions, not by words.
There's the type of man whose speech about this world's life may dazzle thee, and he calls Allah to witness about what is in his heart, yet is he the most contentious of enemies.
Those who have adopted opportunism as their religion are always able to impress people with words. Why? Because it is in their own selfish interest to do so. For them it is not right or wrong that matters. There is no set standard guiding them. They just go by what is calculated to make a favorable impression on the listener. They have no problem in painting a glowing picture on the outside, despite the fact that in their heart of hearts they are bereft of the warmth of true sincerity. They owe no loyalty to truth. They are loyal only to their own interests. Why is it that judged by his words a person appears to be a great reformer, while his actions result only in corruption in the land? It can all be traced to the contradiction in himself. He may have an array of words to demonstrate his love for truth, but in practice he belies his words and acts out of self-interest. So there is bound to be a dichotomy between his words and his actions. He can convey a sense of idealism in speech, but when he gets down to actually doing things, he is drawn by the force of his self-interest to feather his own nest at the expense of others. The one who spoke of peace and reconciliation acts in a manner that leads to strife and conflict. He plays on people's emotions, saying things which will make him popular, with no regard for the real situation. Such are they who have sold themselves for the world. Even when the truth is made plain to them, they do not follow it. They see no benefit for themselves, no furtherance of their own interests in following truth. Only when there is sufficient gain to be had do they uphold the truth, otherwise they deny it. Behind an obsequious exterior they hide a proud ego. That is why they can never acknowledge truth if it comes from a preacher whom they consider inferior to them. There are others who sell their lives, not for themselves, but for God. It is to find favor with him that they strive. They do no accept the demands of their own selves, but the commands of God. At any cost to themselves, they give what they had in the divine cause. It is God's true faith that they seek, so they leave conventional, ancestral religion by the wayside, even though such a move will make them lose in popularity. Their guideline is truth, and they stick to it, despite the fury of the people which pours on them from all sides.
When he turns his back, his aim everywhere is to spread mischief through the earth and destroy crops and cattle. But Allah loveth not mischief.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 212 for the Tafsir.
When it is said to him, Fear Allah, he is led by arrogance to more crime. Enough for him is hell, an evil bed indeed to lie on.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 212 for the Tafsir.
There is the type of man who gives his life to earn the pleasure of Allah, and Allah is full of kindness to his devotees.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayat 212 for the Tafsir.
O ye who believe, enter into Islam wholeheartedly, and follow not the footsteps of the evil one, for he is to you an avowed enemy.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayat 212 for the Tafsir.
If you backslide after the clear signs have come to you, then know that Allah is exalted in power, wise.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayat 212 for the Tafsir.
Will they wait until Allah comes to them in canopies of clouds with angels in his train, and the question is thus settled? But to Allah do all questions go back for decision.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayat 212 for the Tafsir.
Ask the children of Israel how many clear signs we have sent them. But if anyone, after Allah's favor has come to him, substitutes something else, Allah is strict in punishment.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayat 212 for the Tafsir.
The life of this world is alluring to those who reject faith, and they scoff at those who believe. But the righteous will be above them on the day of resurrection, for Allah bestows his abundance without measure on whom he will.
There are two ways of adopting Islam as one's religion. One is to do so without any consideration for one's own interests and reservations, to do what Islam enjoins on one and refrain from what it forbids. This is to enter Islam wholeheartedly. The other way is to take up Islam only to the extent that it does not clash with one's everyday life, and only so long as it serves, or at least does not harm one's own interests. One who adopts the latter course does not let Islam undermine the habits he is accustomed to, the creeds he cherishes, the prophets he craves, the honor he thrives on, or the leadership he seeks to preserve and consolidate. His initial enthusiasm for Islam cools when it requires him to make radical changes in his pattern of thought, or forego personal preferences and desires. He slides back, adhering to Islam in name alone, without letting it harm his interests or interfere with his life in any way. If it is arguments that he seeks to make him truly believe in the message of Islam, then arguments have been provided in full measure. If it is miracles he is looking for, he has God's entire universe before him. But those who cannot bring themselves to accept clear arguments will not be won over by miracles of this nature. What else is the doubter waiting for but that God himself should appear, along with all the angels? When that happens, a sudden surge of belief will not benefit anyone, for that will be a time when fates are sealed, not forged. The whole point of man's being tested in this world is that he should believe in God without having seen him, and solely by virtue of his arguments. It is believing without seeing that will profit man, not seeing and believing. Those who put their own interests first and Islam second, and those who unconditionally enter into Islam are people of very different mettle. It is usually the former who accumulate all the worldly splendors in this life, while the latter remain bereft of things of worldly importance. The mere possession of material resources makes the former group feel justified in assuming an air of superiority. They may look down upon the true believers, but this state of affairs is quite short-lived. The world will end, to give way to a new and finer system in which they will be brought low, and the great will be cut down to size, and those who had been considered lowly will occupy high places in the heavenly world.
Mankind was one single nation, and Allah sent messengers with glad tidings and warnings, and with them he sent the book in truth, to judge between people in matters wherein they differed. But the people of the book, after the clear signs came to them, did not differ among themselves, except through selfish contumacy. Allah by his grace guided the believers to the truth concerning that wherein they differed, for Allah guided whom he will to a path that is straight.
Religion, as revealed by God, is one religion. Yet men differ on this point, putting a variety of interpretations upon divine religion, so that it may fit in with their mental makeup. In this way, different viewpoints, all claiming allegiance to one divine scripture, come into existence. When this happens, God chooses one of his servants to proclaim the truth on earth. He talks in human language, and appears no different from everyone else, but those who are bent on finding truth appreciate the divine quality in his words. Forgetting their differences, they flock to his standard. Others, however, stick stubbornly to their self-contrived interpretations of religion. Why, they contend, should we accept what is taught to us by another? Their claim to have a monopoly over truth makes them proud and prejudiced. It causes them to deny truth itself, the very thing that they in their complacency claim to monopolize.
Or do you think that ye shall enter the garden of bliss without such trials as came to those who passed away before you? They encountered suffering and adversity, and were so shaken in spirit that even the messenger and those of faith who were with him cried, "When will come the help of Allah?" Verily, the help of Allah is always near.
Truth, supported by clear proofs, is revealed to men, yet still they refuse to accept it. Why is this? It is because they see truth as destructive to the dream world they have built up. They view it as damaging to their own interests and honor, as threatening to the comfortable, secure lives to which they have become accustomed. But in order to be faithful to God, we are required to make sacrifices of this nature. It is the road that men are reluctant to tread, because of its dangers and difficulties. But that is the only road which leads to paradise. The price of paradise is one's own self. There is only one way to earn paradise, and that is by total self-abnegation. This involves changing the very foundation of one's life, thinking and acting in accordance with the pattern God has laid down, and giving up former habits. This task cannot be performed without exhorting others to do good deeds and criticizing their misdeeds. People in every age have been especially averse to criticism and admonition of this nature. Teachers of truth then have to be prepared for adverse reactions from their congregations.
They ask thee what they should spend in charity. Say, whatever ye spend that is good, is for parents and kindred and orphans and those in want and for wayfarers. And whatever ye do that is good, Allah knoweth it well.
Man thinks that the best utilization of his life and wealth is for the benefit of his family. He is happy to expend his wealth for his own desires and ambitions. But Islam urges him to spend for the cause of God, which is quite a different form of expenditure, involving spending on others rather than just on oneself. Another tendency is to expend all one's energy on attaining the high worldly position, something which meets the eye, while everlasting reward, which we as yet cannot see, should be one's most important goal. What man may dislike might be pleasing to God, for that alone will benefit us in the next, infinitely vaster world. In God's sight, evil lies in man giving preference to his own pleasure rather than the pleasure of his Creator. Evil may benefit a person in this temporal world, in the hereafter it will do him only harm.
Fighting is prescribed for you, and ye dislike it. But it is possible that ye dislike a thing which is good for you, and that ye love a thing which is bad for you. But Allah knoweth, and ye know not.
The same is true of all aspects of life. People like to live free and unrestricted lives, but it is better for them to adhere to God's laws. They make friends with those who praise them, but they would be better advised to become endeared to their critics, those who are kind enough to point out their faults. In order to save face in the eyes of men, they defy truth, though they would do better to seek honor with God, and God honors only those who uphold the truth. Sacrifice and struggle are things that they shy away from. They prefer religion which promises paradise without such total involvement. But it would be better for them to engage themselves in the sacrifice and struggle which it entails, for that will benefit them in the long run. The trouble is, they are deeply enmeshed in the present life and its issues, whereas they would be wiser paying attention to matters lying beyond death.
They ask thee concerning fighting in the prohibited month. Say, fighting therein is a grave offense, but graver is it in the sight of Allah to prevent access to the path of Allah, to deny Him, to prevent access to the sacred mosque, and drive out its members. Tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter, nor will they cease fighting.
In Rajab 2a, a group of the Prophet's companions clashed with a group of the Quraysh, the pagan Makkans, at Nakhia, which lies between Makkah and Taif. One of the Quraysh was slain. The believers had been under the impression that it was the 30th of Jamad al-Thani, the month before Rajab, but Jamad al-Thani had only 29 days that year. The new moon had risen the evening before. It was the first day of Rajab. Now Rajab is counted among the sacred months, and Arab feeling ran high with regard to the age-old tradition of respect for these months. With this unintentional violation, opponents were able to hurl accusations at the Prophet and his followers. Look, they don't even respect the sacred months, so far gone are they in their contumacy. True, the Qur'an says in reply, fighting in the sacred months is a sin, but this was just by chance and by mistake. The faithful were not aware that Rajab had begun. Besides, the people who were making this accusation were the very ones who deliberately and persistently engaged in far more criminal activities than fighting in the sacred month. There is nothing more abhorrent in the sight of God than one who is involved in far greater crimes attempting to discredit another by exaggerating the latter's minor mistakes. When the call to truth was raised among the Quraysh, not only did they deny it themselves, but they sought to prevent others from following it. Their prejudice and antipathy knew no bounds. They even closed the doors of God's house to the servants of the Lord. In their efforts to force the Prophet's followers to forsake their faith, the Quraysh also turned them out of their houses and tormented them with extreme forms of cruelty. And remember, persecution of a person on account of his faith is a crime worse than any other crime in the eyes of God.
Those who believed and those who suffered exile and fought and strove and struggled in the path of Allah, they have the hope of the mercy of Allah, and Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful.
When the faithful are persecuted in this way and forced to leave their homes, they sometimes even have to take to arms in self-defense. So when the believers were debarred from worship by the polytheists, they were repeatedly subjected to aggression. Such circumstances compelled them at times to take up arms in self-defense. This was a two-sided process which separated the people of God from the enemies of God. On the one hand, some were exposed as servants only of themselves, for who else but one who has no fear of God, pursuing only his own selfish ends, would persecute God's servants. On the other hand, out of this persecution came emigration and peaceful missionary struggle, acts of true faith on the part of those who remained devoted to God through all torment and oppression. There were others, of course, who, unable to withstand the pressure, forsook their faith. That is, such persecution gave the believers the opportunity to show the strength of their faith, and in spite of the adverse atmosphere, their continuing trust in God. This made them stand out from those who, weak in faith, proved unable to withstand the pressure, and lost their trust in God.
They asked thee concerning wine and gambling. Say, in them is great sin, and some profit, for men, but the sin is greater than the profit. They ask thee how much they are to spend. Say, what is beyond your needs? Thus doth Allah make clear to you his signs, in order that ye may consider.
The answers to the above questions reveal certain fundamental principles. Firstly, if something does more harm than good, it should be eschewed. Secondly, any wealth in excess of one's actual needs should be spent for the cause of God. Thirdly, in one's dealings with others, one should avoid any action which could lead to evil, and engage only in such activity as will bring some positive benefit to society. Let us concede that after drinking wine a person becomes elated, and gambling could be looked upon as an easy way of making money without having to work hard for it. But, viewed from a purely moral angle, drinking and gambling lead to such spiritual danger as far outweighs any benefits they may confer. The same rule applies to other human activities. If they are calculated to be more harmful than beneficial, they are to be avoided. Social celebrations, political initiatives, personal enterprises, all the activities of one's life, in fact, should be evaluated in terms of this standard before one ever considers engaging in them.
Their bearings on this life and the hereafter. They ask thee concerning orphans. Say, the best thing to do is what is for their good. If ye mix their affairs with yours, they are your brethren. But Allah knows the man who means mischief from the man who means good. And if Allah had wished, he could have put you into difficulties. He is indeed exalted in power, wise.
Who can truly call himself a true believer? He who makes the next world his goal, and who is constantly striving to find favor with his Lord. Such a man does not make worldly possessions his aim in life. This does not mean, however, that he renounces the world, for a certain number of material things are an obvious necessity. It simply means that when he makes a living and engages in worldly activities, he does so only in so far as such action is related to acquiring the bare necessities of life. His purpose in life is never to amass wealth. His purpose, on the contrary, is to gain the blessing of his Lord. So, out of whatever he has, he keeps only what he really needs for himself and spends the rest for the cause of God. If we were to attempt to state, in explicit, legal terms, how men should deal with their fellow men and how they should conduct their business, this would be too complicated in the context of daily living. It is, therefore, more useful to lay down some fundamental guidelines, to wish others well, and to keep in mind not just our own interests, but also the interests of those with whom we have to deal, thinking of them as brothers. God will never take us to task if we act in a manner which is conducive to harmony and justice.
Do not marry unbelieving women idolaters until they believe. A slave woman who believes is better than an unbelieving woman, even though she allures you. Nor marry your girls to unbelievers until they believe. A man-slave who believes is better than an unbeliever, even though he allures you. Unbelievers do but beckon you to the fire. But Allah beckons by His grace to the garden of bliss and forgiveness, and makes His signs clear to mankind that they may celebrate His praise.
To illustrate the purpose of the matrimonial bond, the relationship between man and woman may be likened to that of a farmer and his field. This means that it is not just for selfish enjoyment that a couple takes the marriage vow. Just as a farmer's task of planting his fields is a serious matter, so also is the husband-wife relationship a serious one. Various factors have to be taken into account, certain guidelines followed. The first thing to be taken into consideration when choosing a spouse is belief. The relationship between husband and wife is an extremely delicate one, balanced precariously within a network of social, domestic, and psychological factors. For such a close, intricate relationship to flourish, there has to be harmony of belief. A Muslim who marries someone of another faith may have to compromise on his beliefs, in which case it will be his faith that suffers, and if he refuses to do so, it will be his marriage which will flounder. Secondly, a husband and his wife should consort and cohabit according to the pattern of creation. Just as revelation is an expression of God's will, so is nature, for it follows divine commands to the letter. Natural laws are for us to follow, just as revealed laws are to be obeyed. And one should fear God at all times, always remembering that He knows a person's inner and outer states, and that eventually one is going to be brought before Him.
They ask thee concerning women's courses. Say, they are a hurt and a pollution, so keep away from women in their courses, and do not approach them until they are clean. But when they have purified themselves, you may approach them in any manner, time, or place ordained for you by Allah. For Allah loves those who turn to Him constantly, and He loves those who keep themselves pure and clean.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 223 for the Tafsir.
Your wives are as a tilth unto you, so approach your tilth when or how you will, but do some good act for your souls beforehand, and fear Allah. And know that ye are to meet Him in the hereafter, and give these good tidings to those who believe.
Doing good works means acting with the hereafter in mind, in the knowledge that there is an eternal side to life, which is more important than the temporal side. It is for eternity that we should strive. Should our actions on earth profit us in this life, but be harmful to our everlasting life, we shall have lived our lives in vain. What we do on earth will be judged after death. We should take care to ensure that our deeds measure up well on God's scale of justice, for if they fail to do so, there is no way we can avoid His punishment.
Make not Allah's name an excuse in your oaths against doing good, or acting rightly, or making peace between persons, for Allah is one who heareth and knoweth all things.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 225 for the Tafsir.
Allah will not call you to account for thoughtlessness in your oaths, but for the intention in your hearts, and He is oft forgiving, most forbearing.
Swayed by anger and obstinacy, sometimes an individual swears an oath that he will not do anything which would benefit a certain person. In ancient times, a variety of such oaths was very common among the Arabs. They swore oaths that they would refrain from such and such a good deed, so that when they were called upon to join some good act, they would decline, saying that they had already taken an oath to the contrary. To refrain from good acts is in itself bad enough, but swearing to this in the name of God is much worse. For God is a being who is all-merciful and all-good. Then attaching the name of God to the non-performance of good works is sinful. Perversion at all events is bad. But if perverse acts are done in the name of God, there is a manifold increase in the evil perpetuated.
For those who take an oath for abstention from their wives, a waiting for 4 months is ordained. If then they return, Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 228 for the Tafsir.
But if their intention is firm for divorce, Allah heareth and knoweth all things.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 228 for the Tafsir.
Divorced women shall wait concerning themselves for 3 monthly periods. Nor is it lawful for them to hide what Allah hath created in their wombs, if they have faith in Allah and the last day. And their husbands have the better right to take them back in that period, if they wish for reconciliation. And women shall have rights similar to the rights against them, according to what is equitable, but men have a degree of advantage over them. And Allah is exalted in power, wise.
There are certain people who keep swearing oaths inadvertently, out of sheer habit. This is quite wrong. A believer must refrain from doing so. However, between husband and wife, Such thoughtless oaths have been held legally invalid due to the delicacy of the marital relationship. But the case of solemn, intentional oaths is different. If a man intentionally swears by God that he will not go to his wife, this is taken seriously and then Islamic law will take its course. In the family system, both the man and the woman have duties as well as rights. Each of them must, as well as demanding his or her rights, honor the rights of others. That is, if we want others to fulfill their obligations to us, we must also fulfill obligations to them. If one misuses his power and advantageous position to act unjustly towards others, then he cannot save himself from God's chastisement.
A divorce is only permissible twice. After that, the parties should either hold together on equitable terms or separate with kindness. It is not lawful for you, men, to take back any of your gifts from your wives, except when both parties fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah. If ye judges do indeed fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah, there is no blame on either of them if she gives something for her freedom. These are the limits ordained by Allah, so do not transgress them. If any do transgress the limits ordained by Allah, such persons wrong themselves as well as others.
Divorce is an abnormal event which takes place in an abnormal situation. But in this most emotional matter too, the Quran commands us to adhere to going in fear of God, taqwa, and to being both just and kind. From this we may gauge what kind of behavior God desires from a believer in this life. We are commanded to break the marriage bond, if this has become unavoidable, in 3 stages and not all at once.
So if a husband divorces his wife irrevocably, he cannot, after that, re-marry her until after she has married another husband and he has divorced her. In that case there is no blame on either of them if they reunite, provided they feel that they can keep the limits ordained by Allah. Such are the limits ordained by Allah, which He makes plain to those who understand.
This course takes 3 months to finalize. The prescribing of a very seriously thought-out procedure in such an extremely emotional matter shows what the behavior of a believer should be in cases of difference and discord. His behavior with his opponent should be dispassionate, well considered, and the result of patient decision-making rather than impulsive action resulting from some hasty or rash decision. Thus, the procedure for divorce has an important lesson for life in general.
When you divorce women, and they fulfill the term of their iddat, either take them back on equitable terms or set them free on equitable terms, but do not take them back to injure them or to take undue advantage. If anyone does that, he wrongs his own soul. Do not treat Allah's signs as a jest, but solemnly rehearse Allah's favors on you, and the fact that He sent down to you the book and wisdom, for your instruction. And fear Allah, and know that Allah is well acquainted with all things.
Even after taking a decision as regards separation, one must continue to consider the possibility of reconciliation. Even when relationships have to be finally severed, one must not take this as an end to all human relations. Even at such trying terms we have to fully adhere to God's law. In carrying out the commands of the Islamic law, no legal loopholes or excuses should be sought to evade their execution. In the observance of the law, the spirit behind the words must be given great importance. For instance, what the husband had given to his wife during their marriage should not be taken back after separation. If before their separation they showed goodwill towards each other, they should also be on their best behavior during their separation. A man once divorced his wife, and did not return to her during the time of waiting. After this period had come to an end, he had second thoughts and, along with some other prospective husbands, he too made her a proposal of marriage. The woman was willing to remarry her former husband, but her brother objected to it. He sought to thwart their reunion, but the Quran decreed that when both agreed between themselves in a lawful manner, they should not be prevented from being reunited.
When you divorce women, and they fulfill the term of their iddat, do not prevent them from marrying their former husbands if they mutually agree on equitable terms. This instruction is for all amongst you who believe in Allah and the Last Day. That is the course making for most virtue and purity amongst you, and Allah knows, and ye know not.
Literally, when you have divorced wives and they reach the end of their waiting period,
the mothers shall give such to their offspring for 2 whole years if the father desires to complete the term, but he shall bear the cost of their food and clothing on equitable terms. No soul shall have a burden laid on it greater than it can bear. No mother shall be treated unfairly on account of her child, nor father on account of his child, and heirs shall be chargeable in the same way. If they both decide on weaning, by mutual consent, and after due consultation, there is no blame on them. If ye decide on a foster mother for your offspring, there is no blame on you, provided ye pay the mother what ye offered on equitable terms. But fear Allah, and know that Allah sees well what ye do.
After divorce, many matters remain to be cleared up. Sometimes the husband and wife wish to remarry, or maybe the woman wishes to have a new husband. On no account should obstacles be placed in their path. A woman may well have children from her former husband. Maybe they are infants who have to be suckled. This being the case, the man and the woman should not cause trouble for one another. Rather than make the matter an emotional issue between them, they should settle it by mutual counsel and consent. This is how a believer should settle matters involving conflict and separation. The interests of both parties should be respected, with neither party seeking to inconvenience the other. Attempts should be made to settle the dispute in a manner acceptable to both sides. This is the cleaner, purer way of settling disputes, a method befitting those whose souls have been purified by true belief. Unless a person believes in God and fears His judgment, he will not be inclined to heed admonishment, no matter how correct and relevant it may be. He will set out to find a loophole in the advice he has been given and make up some excuse for the other for not applying it to himself. One who believes in God and the last day knows, however, that the matter does not end there. Finally, it will come before God, at which point the erring individual will not be able to make any excuses for having shirked his responsibilities.
If any of you die and leave widows behind, they shall wait concerning themselves 4 months and 10 days, when they have fulfilled their term. There is no blame on you if they dispose of themselves in a just and reasonable manner, and Allah is well acquainted with what ye do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 235 for the Tafsir.
There is no blame on you if ye make an offer of betrothal or hold it in your hearts. Allah knows that ye cherish them in your hearts, but do not make a secret contract with them except in terms honorable, nor resolve on the tie of marriage till the term prescribed is fulfilled. And know that Allah knoweth what is in your hearts, and take heed of Him, and know that Allah is oft forgiving, most forbearing.
While explaining the laws of marriage and divorce, the Quran repeatedly enjoins going in fear of God and being kind to others. This shows that to carry out any command in its true spirit, individuals are required to go beyond the wording of that command in its purely legal sense. Rather, they must have feelings of goodwill, well-wishing, kindness, and justice for one another. At the same time, they must always go in fear of God. If they do not behave properly with their fellow men, they will incur God's displeasure. On Judgment Day, neither will excuses come to their rescue, nor will they be able to hide anything from God.
There is no blame on you if ye divorce women before consummation or the fixation of their dower, but bestow on them a suitable gift, the wealthy according to his means, and the poor according to his means. A gift of a reasonable amount is due from those who wish to do the right thing.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 237 for the Tafsir.
And if ye divorce them before consummation, but after the fixation of a dower for them, then the half of the dower is due to them, unless they remit it, or the man's half is remitted by him in whose hands is the marriage tie, and the remission of the man's half is the nearest to righteousness. And do not forget liberality between yourselves, for Allah sees well all that ye do.
If the bride gift is fixed at the time of marriage, the separation takes place before the consummation of the marriage, according to the Islamic law. Half the dower fixed shall be paid by the man to the woman. But the spirit of goodwill calls for both husband and wife to adopt a liberal rather than a legal attitude. The woman should feel that, when the marriage has not been consummated, she should, as the law requires, remit half the amount of the bride gift due to her, while the man should feel that although he is legally entitled to deduct half of the amount, he should rather hand over all of it as a gesture of goodwill. This attitude of liberality and goodwill is required in all matters of life. A truly Muslim society is that in which its members are more interested in giving to one another, rather than in taking from one another. Furthermore, this attitude of liberality should be evinced in times of enmity as well as in friendship.
Guard strictly your habit of prayers, especially the middle prayer, and stand before Allah in a devout frame of mind.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 240 for the Tafsir.
If ye fear an enemy, pray on foot, or riding, as may be most convenient, but when ye are in security, celebrate Allah's praises in the manner He has taught you, which ye knew not before.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 240 for the Tafsir.
Those of you who die and leave widows should bequeath for their widows a year's maintenance and residence, but if they leave the residence, there is no blame on you for what they do with themselves, provided it is reasonable. And Allah is exalted in power, wise.
The word hafizu, literally guard, is used to denote yet another aspect of prayer. It is as if prayer were an object to be guarded just the way wealth is. Great care in observing the proper timings of prayer, even in times of the greatest danger, and refraining from all such actions as may mar the spirit of prayer. All this is implied by the guarding of prayer. The third aspect of prayer is humility. It is the essence of prayer. Prayer is the standing of His servants before their Lord. Therefore, it is essential that at times of prayer, that state of mind should be induced in the suppliant, which prevails when the most humble stands before the Most High.
For divorced women, maintenance should be provided on a reasonable scale. This is a duty on the righteous.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 242 for the Tafsir.
Thus doth Allah make clear His signs to you, in order that ye may understand.
Setting forth injunctions regarding social matters, the Quran states, "This is an obligation binding on the righteous." This shows us an important aspect of Islamic law. In mutual matters there are certain rights on which the law has been laid down, but there are further mutual rights which go beyond fixed boundaries. These rights can be seen as such only by those who are God-fearing. The more one is God-fearing, the more sensitive one is in discharging one's duties with regard to giving others their dues.
Didst thou not turn by vision to those who abandoned their homes, that there were thousands in number, for fear of death? Allah said to them, "Die," then He restored them to life. For Allah is full of bounty to mankind, but most of them are ungrateful.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 244 for the Tafsir.
Then fight in the cause of Allah, and know that Allah heareth and knoweth all things.
The Muslims left Mecca for Medina as a result of severe persecution at the hands of the Meccans. In Medina, they were free to live in accordance with their religion, but the opponents of Islam did not leave matters at that. They began launching armed onslaughts on the Muslims in order to uproot them from Medina. The Muslims at that time were far less in number and had fewer resources as compared to their opponents. This discouraged them from going ahead and facing the enemy. On this occasion, God reminded them of an event in the history of the Israelites, where in the trials of life, fear of defeat was defeat itself. The Philistines, a neighboring people, once attacked the Israelites and defeated them, slaying more than 4,000 Hebrews. The Israelites were so greatly stricken with fear that they abandoned their homes and ran away. Thus the glory departed from Israel, and in the words of the Bible, all the houses of Israel trembled with fear and beseeched the Lord. 20 years passed in this state. Then they all gave serious thought as to why they had been defeated by the Philistines. Their prophet Samuel said to them, "If you return to the Lord with all your hearts, then put away the foreign gods from among you, and prepare your hearts for the Lord, and serve Him only, and He will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines." 1 Samuel 7:3. So they put away the foreign gods and served only their Lord. Now the Philistines drew near to battle against Israel, but the Lord thundered on that day with a great thunder upon the Philistines and discomfited them, and they were smitten before Israel. Samuel 7:10. Abandoning the path of trust in God leads to the moral death of nations and communities, while opting for the path of trust in God leads to their regeneration.
Who is he that will loan to Allah a beautiful loan, which Allah will double unto his credit and multiply many times? It is Allah that giveth you want or plenty, and to Him shall be your return.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 246 for the Tafsir.
Hast thou not turned thy vision to the chiefs of the children of Israel after the time of Moses? They said to a prophet that was among them, "Appoint for us a king, that we may fight in the cause of Allah." He said, "Is it not possible, if you are commanded to fight, that you will not fight?" They said, "How could we refuse to fight in the cause of Allah, seeing that we were turned out of our homes and our families?" But when they were commanded to fight, they turned back, except a small band among them. But Allah has full knowledge of those who do wrong.
Spending for the cause of God's religion is called giving a generous loan. This spending is purely for God. No other interest is involved. God called for a loan to be given to Him, and He called it a generous loan because He would return it many times over. The facing of difficulties and setbacks by a believer is in no way a deprivation. It is indeed akin to opening a new door to God's blessings. At a later stage, by spending his life and wealth for the cause of God, he becomes deserving of those blessings of God that no one would ordinarily receive. About 300 years after the death of Moses, the Israelites were again subjugated by the polytheistic neighboring nations. After having remained in that state of subjugation for about a quarter of a century, they felt the urge to bring back their period of glory. For this purpose, they needed a leader around whom they could rally in order to fight their enemies. So their prophet Samuel appointed a man called Talat in the Quran and Saul in the Bible. Tall, wise, and strong, Saul was distinguished in physique and commanding in appearance. Although he was superior both in mind and body, the Hebrews were loath to accept his leadership and raised all kinds of petty objections, one of which was that he belonged to the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel. Moreover, he was not rich. Out of sheer selfishness, each one of them, instead of desiring the good of the people as a whole, as a leadership, wanted to be leader and king himself.
Their prophet said to them, Allah hath appointed Talat as king over you. They said, how can he exercise authority over us when we are better fitted than he to exercise authority, and he is not even gifted with wealth in abundance? He said, Allah hath chosen him above you, and hath gifted him abundantly with knowledge and bodily prowess. Allah granteth his authority to whom he pleaseth. Allah careth for all, and he knoweth all things.
Stirring up controversies on all issues was indicative of their degeneration. God's decrees are based on knowledge and broad-mindedness. Therefore, only that person will be held to be a true believer who is broad-minded in his thinking and who takes decisions on the basis of realities rather than prejudices and other petty considerations. The restoration of the Ark of the Covenant was an extraordinary testimony to the appointment of Talat, Saul, by God's own will.
And further their prophet said to them, a sign of his authority is that there shall come to you the Ark of the Covenant, with an assurance therein of security from your Lord, and the relics left by the family of Moses and the family of Aaron, carried by angels. And this is a symbol for you if ye indeed have faith.
The Israelites had a sacred chest, or box, known as the Ark of the Covenant at Tabet, which they had had in their possession from the time they left Egypt. It contained the 10 Commandments engraved on stone, as well as relics of Moses and Aaron. This was a possession sacred to Israel. It served as a visible symbol of God's gracious presence. It guided them on their journey, and led them on from victory to victory. It was lost to the enemy in the early part of Samuel's ministry. But in the town where this ark was placed, plague and pestilence broke out, and the Philistines were terrified. Subsequently, they placed it on a driverless cart drawn by 2 cows. The beasts took it of their own accord to Beit Ashemsh, a city of Judah. The Israelites were immensely overjoyed at its miraculous restoration.
When Talat set forth with the armies, he said, Allah will test you at the stream. If any drinks of its water, he goes not with my army. Only those who taste not of it go with me. A mere sip out of the hand is excused. But they all drank of it, except a few. When they crossed the river, he and the faithful ones with him, they said, this day we cannot cope with Goliath and his forces. But those who were convinced that they must meet Allah said, how oft, by Allah's will, hath a small force vanquished a big one. Allah is with those who steadfastly persevere.
About 300 years after Moses and about 1,000 years before Christ, the Philistines attacked the Israelites and annexed most of the region of Palestine. After a period of time, the Israelites wished to take some action against the Philistines so that they might recover their lands from them. At that time, there was a prophet called Samuel among them. Living in an ancient city in Syria, known as Ramah, Samuel was in charge of the community matters of the Israelites. Therefore, a delegation met him and said to him, now that you have aged, you should appoint a king from amongst us, in order that we may wage war against our enemies under the command of our leader. Although Samuel did not have a good opinion of the character of the Israelites, he agreed to their request and promised to appoint a king for them. Therefore, he appointed a brave youth, Saul, who belonged to the tribe of Benjamin. Saul Talat set forth with the army to meet the enemy. On the way, they had to cross the river Jordan. Since Saul was aware of the weaknesses of the Israelites, he employed a simple method to test them. He gave the order that, while crossing the river, no one was to drink more than a handful of water from it. The majority of the Israelites failed the test. However, God was with them, and they emerged victorious under the leadership of Saul. A decisive role was played in this battle by David, a young Israelite soldier who was one of those who had full confidence in God. The feat he performed was to kill the enemy's supreme commander, Goliath, Jalat. Upon the fall of Goliath, the Philistine army broke ranks and fled.
When they advanced to meet Goliath and his forces, they prayed, "Our Lord, pour out constancy on us and make our steps firm. Help us against those that reject faith."
What is essential to gain a victory in any such encounter is that the participants must have the capacity to persevere, whatever the odds, and must obey their leader. Saul forbade his soldiers to drink water from the river in order to test their obedience and perseverance. According to the Bible, only 600 out of the whole army were able to refrain from drinking water. Those who could not resist drinking it were confirmed in their moral weakness. That was why they were all the more terrified at the sight of the apparently strong army of their enemies. But those who had not drunk the river water had by their obedience confirmed their patience and endurance. Then they realized that God alone brought defeat or granted victory. In the words of the Bible, "Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." 1 Samuel 17:47.
By Allah's will they routed them, and David slew Goliath, and Allah gave him power and wisdom and taught him whatever else he willed. And did not Allah check one set of people by means of another, the earth would indeed be full of mischief, but Allah is full of bounty to all the worlds.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 252 for the Tafsir.
These are the signs of Allah, we rehearse them to thee in truth. Verily thou art one of the messengers.
Literally, we favored some above others.
Those messengers we endowed with gifts, some above others. To one of them Allah spoke, others he raised to degrees of honor. To Jesus the son of Mary we gave clear signs, and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. If Allah had so willed, succeeding generations would not have fought among each other, after clear signs had come to them, but they chose to wrangle, some believing and others rejecting. If Allah had so willed, they would not have fought each other, but Allah fulfilleth his plan.
When God sends one of his messengers to bring the truth to mankind, his call is marked by signs so unmistakable that his congregation has no difficulty in recognizing his message to be from God. Yet, in spite of this, people give no credence to his words. The first to deny God's messenger are those who are followers of past prophets. Each prophet receives certain special favors from God in order to facilitate the communication of his message according to the varying exigencies of the different historical periods in which he lived. But the followers, attaching too much importance to the miracle bestowed by God on a particular prophet, came to believe that their particular prophet was superior to all others. They felt that none could surpass the prophet they believed in. They consequently saw no reason to listen to the contemporary prophet, whose name had yet to be hallowed by tradition. For instance, believers in Moses rejected Jesus. Followers of the latter disbelieved in the prophet Muhammad. In the case of Moses, his followers held him to be greater than all other prophets, because he had the distinction of being addressed directly by God. Believers in Jesus considered him peerless, because he had been born to a virgin mother. Those who have come to reform and revitalize the Muslim community since the passing of the final prophet have fared no better. They have been treated with total irreverence, as creatures of no account whatsoever, for the simple reason that their contemporaries believed themselves to be successors of earlier saints and thus were in no need of further religious counseling, particularly by someone who appeared to be inferior to their own predecessors. When communities begin to go into a decline, they become preoccupied with worldly interests, yet they do not wish to forfeit their right to salvation, and as a form of psychological defense, attach themselves mentally to hallowed religious personalities. They fondly imagine that the lofty status of their saintly patrons will ensure their redemption in the next world, no matter how unethical their conduct might have been in this world. It is this false sense of security which gives such people the audacity to oppose those who call them to God. It is imaginable that God might have arranged human destiny in such a way that man, having no freedom to demur, was obliged invariably to bow to his will. But this was not part of God's scheme for mankind. God gave man freedom of action in order to put him to the divine test. He wished to see if man could find his way to his Maker, while he himself remained invisible. For this reason, man is required to be able to recognize the word of God, albeit uttered by the human tongue, and to penetrate the veil of outward forms in order to reach the hidden, inner truth.
O ye who believe, spend out of the bounties we have provided for you, before the day comes when no bargaining will avail, nor friendship nor intercession. Those who reject faith, they are the wrong doers.
Only one who spends for the cause of God finds God. When he finds him, he comes into possession of a light which leads him on to the straight and undeviating path to paradise, the final destination of a true believer. On the other hand, one who wants God without paying this price remains in darkness forever. Spending for God's cause relates here to any kind of sacrifice made for the sake of God, and not merely to spending one's wealth. For instance, devoting one's life to the cause of God, sacrificing one's material interests and considerations to go ahead along God's path. When one accepts an ideology at the cost of sacrifice, then it shows that one is sincere about it. Sincerity is a matter of great importance, for regardless of the issue, it is only when one is sincere that one can delve deeply into the subject, then all its secrets are laid bare before one. It is this element of sincerity that enables a real relationship to be created between the man and his goal. In consequence, all the aspects of that goal are revealed to him.
Allah, there is no God but He, the living, the self-subsisting, eternal. No slumber can seize Him nor sleep. His are all things in the heavens and on earth. Who is there can intercede in His presence except as He permitteth? He knoweth what appeareth to His creatures as before or after or behind them, nor shall they compass aught of His knowledge except as He willeth. His throne doth extend over the heavens and the earth, and He feeleth no fatigue in guarding and preserving them, for He is the Most High, the Supreme in glory.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 257 for the Tafsir.
Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. Whoever rejects evil and believes in Allah hath grasped the most trustworthy hand, hold, that never breaks. And Allah heareth and knoweth all things.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 257 for the Tafsir.
Allah is the protector of those who have faith. From the depths of darkness He will lead them forth into light. Of those who reject faith, the patrons are the evil ones. From light they will lead them forth into the depths of darkness. They will be companions of the fire, to dwell therein forever.
Unlike sincere devotees, there are some who never accept religion at the cost of the surrender of their being. They are never serious in matters of religion, and as a result believe that intercession by certain religious seers or the performance of certain rituals, or the observance of certain forms is enough to earn salvation in the hereafter. Due to their insincerity about the hereafter, they fail to understand that doomsday is the day of the manifestation of God's power and majesty, hoping that the performance of certain superficial rituals might earn them God Almighty's pleasure is indeed an underestimation of God's divinity. This only increases their sinfulness in the eyes of God. The truth comes to one in the form of arguments, and one who is not sincere summarily rejects them. This is one of Satan's temptations. Guidance comes only to those who scrupulously resist Satan's temptations, and, recognizing the divine arguments, wholeheartedly concur in them.
Hast thou not turned thy vision to one who disputed with Abraham about his Lord, because Allah had granted him power? Abraham said, My Lord is He who giveth life and death. He said, I give life and death. Said Abraham, But it is Allah that causeth the sun to rise from the east. Do thou then cause him to rise from the west. Thus was he confounded who in arrogance rejected faith. Nor doth Allah give guidance to a people unjust.
In the modern age, the right to govern a people is secured by popular support. However, that was not the case in pre-democratic times, when kings sanctioned their rule over their subjects by laying claim to being some kind of divine incarnation. Nimrod, a king of ancient Iraq, was a case in point. A contemporary of Abraham, he was one of those monarchs who used this method to back up his right of sovereignty over the people. The sun was believed by his people to be the chief of the gods, and was thus revered by them as an object of worship. Nimrod claimed that he was an incarnation of the sun god, a position which gave him a divine right to worldly sovereignty. When Abraham preached the message of the one God in the land of Iraq, his teachings had no direct connection with politics or government in the country. All he did was to impress upon the people that there was but one God. He was their sole Lord and Master. There were no partners with him in the Godhead, so mankind should worship him alone, fearing him and placing their hopes in him. Though Abraham's message was apolitical, it nevertheless appeared to Nimrod as a threat to his political claims, for according to the message taught by Abraham, even the sun was part of God's creation. It had no power of its own, but was controlled by God Almighty. Had his subjects accepted Abraham's message of the one God, it would have amounted to demolishing the theological base on which the edifice of his political power rested. It was for this reason that Nimrod turned vehemently against Abraham and his teachings. The dialogue conducted between Abraham and Nimrod shows us the method adopted by the prophets in the communication of their message. First of all, Abraham pointed out that his Lord had control over life and death. Immediately, Nimrod disputed this, claiming himself to have power over life and death. Abraham, of course, could have answered this claim made by Nimrod, but he did not want the conversation to deteriorate into a heated polemical discussion. So instead of persisting with this point, he changed the subject and chose another example, one with which Nimrod would not be able to argue. Abraham did not consider Nimrod his enemy or rival. Rather, he had compassion for him as a Madhu addressee and earnestly wished to communicate to him the message of truth. It was this compassion which showed Abraham the correct method to be adopted in addressing the Iraqi king. Since the present world is a place where man is being tested, there are always different options open to everyone. This causes people to construe situations in different ways. For instance, should one be endowed with worldly wealth and power, one may consider these to be a personal success, the outcome of one's own talent. One may, on the other hand, look at them purely as blessings from God. The former way of seeing things amounts to grave injustice, while the latter shows a grateful disposition. For one who is thankless in his outlook, everything in this world will only serve to lead him further astray. Everything he experiences will only add to his pride and conceit. But for those who are grateful for what they have been given, everything they experience in this world leads them closer to God. The world, and all that it contains, serves to stimulate their faith in God.
Take the similitude of one who passed by a hamlet, all in ruins to its roofs. He said, "Oh, how shall Allah bring it ever to life, after this its death?" But Allah caused him to die for 100 years, then raised him up again. He said, "How long didst thou tarry thus?" He said, "Perhaps a day, or part of a day." He said, "Nay, thou hast tarried thus 100 years, but look at thy food and thy drink, they show no signs of age. And look at thy donkey, and that we may make of thee a sign unto the people, look further at the bones, how we bring them together and clothe them with flesh." When this was shown clearly to him, he said, "I know that Allah hath power over all things."
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 260 for the Tafsir.
When Abraham said, "Show me, Lord, how you will raise the dead," he replied, "Have you no faith?" He said, "Yes, but just to reassure my heart." Allah said, "Take 4 birds, draw them to you, and cut their bodies to pieces. Scatter them over the mountain tops, then call them back. They will come swiftly to you. Know that Allah is mighty, wise."
The 2 experiences of resurrection after death mentioned here relate to the prophets. It is generally thought that in the first incident, the prophet in question was Ezra Uzer, 5th century B.C., while in the second, as the Quran itself makes clear, it was Abraham, who lived between the years 2160 and 1985 BC. Prophets are sent by God in order to inform mankind of realities which, for ordinary people, lie beyond the realm of human vision, being screened by a veil of cause and effect. This veil is removed, however, in the case of the prophets, since it is their task to inform others of these realities. This can be done with far greater conviction if they have actually witnessed with their own eyes the facts which they attempt to convey to the rest of mankind. Their hearers also are more likely to believe in their message rather than treating it purely as hearsay. Prophets have generally been endowed with prophethood around the age of 40. Prior to this, they have shown impeccable honesty in their dealings with their fellows. Having provided practical proof of their truthfulness, the time then came for them to inform mankind of those realities of life which God, in order to test men, has kept hidden from them. These truthful human beings, known as prophets, communicated to mankind the message revealed to them by God, while providing evidence based on nature and reason to back up their teachings. The prophets have always been fully sincere in what they taught. It is shown by the fact that they themselves have never wavered from the truth, despite the severe hardships which they had to endure as a result of following this course. If they had simply concocted their message, they would not have proved so persistent in their adherence to it, for the mendacious usually crack under pressure and abandon this subject. Neither does something which has been formulated by the human mind, as opposed to being inspired by God, conform so perfectly to the phenomena of the outside world.
The parable of those who spend their substance in the way of Allah is that of a grain of corn. It groweth 7 ears, and each ear hath 100 grains. Allah giveth manifold increase to whom He pleaseth, and Allah careth for all, and He knoweth all things.
Every act committed by man is like a seed planted in the ground. If one does something in order to be admired by others, it is as though one is planting a seed in the earth of this world. If, on the other hand, one acts in order to please God, then one has sown a seed in the everlasting fields of the hereafter, where it will blossom and bear fruit. In this world, one seed produces 1,000 grains of corn. Likewise, in the harvest of the hereafter, man will reap rewards far in excess of what he has sown.
Those who spend their substance in the cause of Allah, and follow not up their gifts with reminders of their generosity or with injury, for them their reward is with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve.
One who spends his wealth in order to gain worldly fame and prestige, and who seeks to be recompensed in this ephemeral world, will have no share in the rewards of the life everlasting. Those who spend for the cause of God, on the other hand, adopt a different approach. They do not, for one, taunt their beneficiaries with reminders of the favors they have bestowed. Indeed, having spent from their wealth for the cause of God, they do not consider themselves to have bestowed any favor at all upon anyone, and they do not show any displeasure if a gracious response is not forthcoming from those to whom they have been generous. This is because their hopes are pinned on being rewarded in full by God, so what do they care if human beings show appreciation or not? Moreover, if they are unable to accede to a request for monetary assistance, at least they do not rebuff the suppliant. Instead, they find kind words with which to excuse themselves, for they know that God hears everything they say. Their fear of God makes them circumspect in the choice of words they utter to their fellow human beings.
Kind words and the covering of faults are better than charity followed by injury. Allah is free of all wants, and He is most forbearing.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 264 for the Tafsir.
O ye who believe! Cancel not your charity by reminders of your generosity or by injury, like those who spend their substance to be seen of men, but believe neither in Allah nor in the last day. They are in parable like a hard, barren rock, on which is a little soil, on it falls heavy rain, which leaves it just a bare stone. They will be able to do nothing with aught they have earned, and Allah guideth not those who reject faith.
Some soil, earth, may collect on the surface of a boulder. Outwardly it appears as though this is good, fertile soil, but when a gust of wind brings a rain shower down upon it, then the earth is washed away, leaving the rock exposed to the elements. The same is true of one who has donned the superficial robe of piety, without that piety having permeated his entire being. Should he be addressed rudely by someone asking for financial help, or should his ego receive a wounding blow, he becomes so irritated that he exceeds all bounds of decency in his response. Incidents of this nature are like the showers of rain which wash away his outward garb of piety, leaving his true nature exposed to the outside world. To do things for God's sake is to give priority to the invisible over the visible world. It is to set one's sights on an unseen world, over and above the world which meets the eye. This requires a loftiness of vision. Those who show such sublimity of vision have the door of God's realization open to them.
The likeness of those who spend their substance, seeking to please Allah and to strengthen their souls, is as a garden, high and fertile. Heavy rain falls on it but makes it yield a double increase of harvest, and if it receives not heavy rain, light moisture sufficeth it. Allah seeth well whatever ye do.
If an individual has some goal in mind, his own striving towards the attainment of that goal further strengthens his willpower and increases the mental resolve which enables him to reach his objective. Should it be the objects of his own desires towards which his efforts are directed, then the more he exerts himself, the more he will set his heart on them. However, should it be the will of God that holds pride of place in determining his actions, then it will be God on whom his heart is set. One acts at all events under conditions which are sometimes difficult and sometimes comparatively easy. But the more difficult the conditions one encounters, the greater will be the increase in one's willpower, and the stronger one's connection to that on which one's heart is set. One who spends for the cause of God under normal conditions will certainly have his reward from God. However, when spending for God's cause is done in adverse circumstances, which call for a special exercise of willpower, the reward which God grants on such occasions will be commensurately greater. For instance, if the outlay of one's wealth is done on something from which no worldly benefit will be forthcoming, then in that case it is done solely for the sake of God. Then one may have to give to a person to whom one would rather not give anything. Again, it is done just to please God. One may have a grudge against someone, yet one still extends to him the hand of friendship. All these acts strengthen one's bond with the Lord, opening the way to his special grace and succor.
Does any of you wish that he should have a garden with date, palms and vines and streams flowing underneath, and all kinds of fruit, while he is stricken with old age, and his children are not strong enough to look after themselves, that it should be caught in a whirlwind, with fire therein, and be burnt up? Thus doth Allah make clear to you his signs, that ye may consider.
When an individual plants an orchard in his youth, he does so in the hope that he will enjoy its fruits when he grows old. How unfortunate, then, is one who sees his beautiful orchard reduced to rubble towards the end of his days, just when he stands in greatest need of it. Now time has run out on him, and he has no chance of nurturing new saplings. This is exactly what will happen to those who engage themselves in a religious cause, purely out of lust for worldly prestige and profit. Outwardly, they appear to be engaged in pious works, but it is only in their form that their actions differ from those of the run-of-the-mill materialists of this world. In reality, there is no difference between the two types of people. Normally, people seeking worldly fame and prestige choose worldly means of attaining their goals, whereas hypocritical people choose religious means of advancement towards the same worldly ends. All are aiming at the same unnamed goals, only the ways in which they go about achieving them are different. People guided by worldly motives in all their actions will find no reward awaiting them in the hereafter. God's signs take an obtruse form. Only those who cultivate in themselves a capacity for reflection are able to decipher these signs and, through them, come to know God.
O ye who believe, give of the good things which ye have honorably earned, and of the fruits of the earth which we have produced for you, and do not even aim at getting anything which is bad, in order that out of it ye may give away something, when ye yourselves would not receive it except with closed eyes. And know that Allah is free of all wants and worthy of all praise.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 268 for the Tafsir.
Evil one threatens you with poverty and bids you to conduct unseemly. Allah promiseth you his forgiveness and bounties, and Allah careth for all, and he knoweth all things.
There are two ways of spending one's earnings in this world. One is to spend in ways shown by Satan. Another is to spend in ways shown by God. What Satan does is to impress on the minds of human beings the importance of personal requirements and bring about conviction that all their earnings are best spent on personal comforts and luxuries. When Satan sees that any individual has more wealth than is necessary for his personal needs, he kindles in him another desire, that of indulging in showy activities. At the instigation of Satan, man spends all his money on ostentatious living and feels happy that he has spent his money in the best possible way. What is desired of man is that he should not regard his wealth as his personal possession, but rather as something that belongs only to God. He should spend as much of his wealth as is necessary for his actual needs, and the rest he should spend on achieving higher goals. He should give this surplus wealth to the weaker of God's servants and also spend for the cause of God's religion. When he spends for the weaker section of society, he hopes that in the hereafter, when he appears empty-handed before God, he will not be deprived of God's blessings. Similarly, when he spends his wealth for the cause of God's religion, he allies himself with God's mission.
He granteth wisdom to whom he pleaseth, and he to whom wisdom is granted receiveth indeed a benefit overflowing, but none will grasp the message but men of understanding.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 272 for the Tafsir.
And whatever ye spend in charity or devotion, be sure Allah knows it all, but the wrong-doers have no helpers.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 272 for the Tafsir.
If ye disclose acts of charity, even so it is well, but if ye conceal them, and make them reach those really in need, that is best for you, it will remove from you some of your stains of evil. And Allah is well acquainted with what ye do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 272 for the Tafsir.
It is not required a full messenger to set them on the right path, but Allah sets on the right path whom he pleaseth. Whatever of good ye give benefits your own souls, and ye shall only do so seeking the face of Allah. Whatever good ye give shall be rendered back to you, and ye shall not be dealt with unjustly.
One who spends his money for the sake of God in the way that he has commanded him to do proves that he has been blessed with wisdom. Wisdom here means knowledge and understanding of the Qur'an. The biggest folly is to be so enamored of one's wealth that one fails to spend for the cause of God, and the greatest wisdom lies in recognizing that monetary interests do not present any obstacle to one's engaging oneself in God's work. One should consider God's cause as one's own. One who lives within the cocoon of personal interests and considerations cannot possess the insight which would enable him to see higher realities and experience higher states of consciousness. On the contrary, one who goes ahead towards God by ignoring all personal considerations raises himself above all limitations. His consciousness reaches the divine level of God, who is independent, free from all wants, praiseworthy, all-sufficient, and wise. Man is thus enabled to see things as they are, for he goes beyond the limitations which serve as obstacles to seeing things in their true form. However true any argument may be, its truth dawns upon one only when one can see it with an open mind.
Charity is for those in need, who, in Allah's cause, are restricted from travel and cannot move about in the land, seeking for trade or work. The ignorant man thinks, because of their modesty, that they are free from want. Thou shalt know them by their unfailing mark. They beg not importunately from all the sundry. And whatever of good ye give, be assured Allah knoweth it well.
There are two ways of spending one's earnings in this world. One is to spend in ways shown by Satan. Another is to spend in ways shown by God. What Satan does is to impress on the minds of human beings the importance of personal requirements, and bring about conviction that all their earnings are best spent on personal comforts and luxuries.
Those who in charity spend of their goods by night and by day, in secret and in public, have their reward with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve.
The greatest way to spend money for the cause of God is to extend monetary help to those of God's servants who have devoted themselves wholly to the cause of His religion, thus leaving themselves no time to earn for their personal needs. Just as a successful businessman has little free time for anything except his business, similarly one who serves the cause of religion full-time has no time to work to make money for himself. Furthermore, each job shapes in a particular way the thinking of the person involved. One who involves himself in business develops the relevant skills, so that he is able to easily understand the complexities of commerce. But that same person will not be able to understand the nuances of religion's cause. Similarly, a religious worker will not be able to successfully run a business, for he cannot concentrate on business matters due to his attention being diverted elsewhere. However, a society needs both kinds of activities. The solution to this problem is for those who possess monetary resources to arrange a share for those who, because of their religious commitments, are unable to provide for their own economic needs. This is like a tacit division of labor, which takes place between the two groups purely in order to earn God's pleasure. The missionary, having devoted himself to God, does not ask anything from others, nor does he expect anything from them. On the other hand, those who are monetarily strong, knowing that they have amassed wealth for not devoting themselves to the cause of religion, which they should have done, think that they should, by way of compensation, give a share of their wealth to their brothers in faith. Spending for a peaceful religious struggle which brings no fame or laurels makes one all the more deserving of God's blessings, for such spending is only to seek God's pleasure.
Those who devour usury will not stand except as stand one whom the evil one by his touch hath driven to madness. That is because they say, trade is like usury, but Allah hath permitted trade and forbidden usury. Those who after receiving direction from their Lord desist, shall be pardoned for the past, their case is for Allah to judge, but those who repeat the offense are companions of the fire, they will abide therein forever.
The word riba in the original is translated here as usury, which means the practice of lending money to people at unfairly high rates of interest.
Allah will deprive usury of all blessing, but will give increase for deeds of charity, for He loveth not creatures ungrateful and wicked.
See Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 277 for the Tafsir.
Those who believe, and do deeds of righteousness, and establish regular prayers and regular charity, will have their reward with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve.
Man has not been sent into this world to hoard wealth. All the good things of this life are meant for the next world. Man has been sent into this world so that it may be judged whether or not he has developed those qualities that would qualify him to inherit the world of paradise in the hereafter. Those adjudged fit to dwell in paradise will be separated from the unfit, and the latter will be consigned to hell. Practicing charity, tzedakah, means giving one's wealth to the needy for the sake of God, while engaging in usury means giving one's wealth in order to exploit others. Tzedakah is an indication of the fact that man wants to see the massive array of God's blessings in the next world, whereas usury is indicative of the fact that he wants to amass fortunes in this world itself. The alms giver and the usurer are two different types of individuals. It is not possible that they will both have the same fate in the hereafter. Only those find the world who have worked hard for it. Similarly, only those will find the hereafter who have sacrificed their wealth in order to receive God's blessings in the hereafter.
O ye who believe, fear Allah, and give up what remains of your demand for usury, if ye are indeed believers.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 280 for the Tafsir.
If ye do it not, take notice of war from Allah and His Messenger. But if ye turn back, ye shall have your capital some, deal not unjustly, and ye shall not be dealt with unjustly.
See Surah Al-Baqarah Ayah 280 for the Tafsir.
If the debtor is in a difficulty, grant him time till it is easy for him to repay. But if ye remit it by way of charity, that is best for you if ye only knew.
The basic principle of the reformation of a society is for its members to treat each other with justice. There should be neither oppressor nor oppressed. Usury is a form of open economic oppression. That is why Islam has held it unlawful. Business based on the principle of usury, if engaged in under Islamic rule, is deemed to be a criminal offense. However, just as a usurer is not allowed to make anyone the target of his economic oppression, others should also refrain from subjecting him to their oppression. An offender in one field is not deprived of his rights in other fields. Any action taken against any usurer may consist only of withholding the interest due to him. His capital should be returned to him. While giving general commands, Islam makes full concessions to human weaknesses. That is why we have been commanded that if a debtor has fallen upon hard times, he must be granted respite till he is able to repay his debt. We have also been enjoined that if the debtor is insolvent, we should have the courage to write off his debt as charity. One who is forbearing shall deserve a reward from God. This is beneficial in this world too. An atmosphere of mutual compassion, sympathy, and well-wishing is produced, which is good for all members of society.
And fear the day when ye shall be brought back to Allah. Then shall every soul be paid what it earned, and none shall be dealt with unjustly.
However, the imposition of law alone is not a guarantee of social reforms. For a real reform, it is essential that the spirit of God-fearing taqwa prevails in society. That is why, while giving legal commands, the Quran places faith, taqwa, and the hereafter in the foreground. Even a secular system will run successfully only when its citizens possess the necessary national character. Similarly, the Islamic system is truly brought into being when a considerable number of its members possess the spirit of taqwa. National character, or taqwa, is in fact another name for the willingness of the individuals to uphold the desired system. If we do not find public acceptance of the system to a certain degree, it cannot be imposed by the power of law alone. Furthermore, according to Islam, what is actually most desirable is the reform of the individual. Society is not the target of reform according to Islam. The reform of society is only a byproduct. The Quran calls to faith, to taqwa, to genuine concern for the hereafter. This call is realized in the individual and not in a social system. That is why the actual addressee of the Quranic call is the individual. The reform of society is in actual fact a social manifestation of the reform of a number of individuals.
O ye who believe, when ye deal with each other, in transactions involving future obligations in a fixed period of time, reduce them to writing. Let a scribe write down faithfully as between the parties. Let not the scribe refuse to write, as Allah has taught him, so let him write. Let him who incurs the liability dictate, but let him fear his Lord Allah, and not diminish aught of what he owes. If the party liable is mentally deficient, or weak, or unable himself to dictate, let his guardian dictate faithfully, and get 2 witnesses out of your own men. And if there are not 2 men, then a man and 2 women, such as ye choose, for witnesses, so that if one of them errs, the other can remind her. The witnesses should not refuse when they are called on for evidence. Disdain not to reduce to writing your contract for a future period, whether it be small or big. It is juster in the sight of Allah, more suitable as evidence, and more convenient to prevent doubts among yourselves. But if it be a transaction which ye carry out on the spot among yourselves, there is no blame on you if ye reduce it not to writing. But take witness whenever ye make a commercial contract, and let neither scribe nor witness suffer harm. If ye do such harm, it would be wickedness in you. So fear Allah, for it is good that teaches you, and Allah is well acquainted with all things. If ye are on a journey and cannot find a scribe, a pledge with possession may serve the purpose. And if one of you deposits a thing on trust with another, let the trustee faithfully discharge his trust, and let him fear his Lord. Conceal not evidence, for whoever conceals it, his heart is tainted with sin. And Allah knoweth all that ye do.
Where there is a cash transaction between two parties, the matter ends there itself. But contracting a debt is a different matter. In such a case, if the transaction is purely verbal, there is a possibility of differences arising due to the absence of written proof. Either party will present the matter according to his own perceptions, for there is no clear or absolute basis on which a proper decision may be arrived at. As a result, differences and complaints arise between the two parties at the time of payment. The only solution is to write down the particulars of the loan and then have witnesses testify to it. If any differences arise, this document would become the basis for a final decision. For a believer, this would be a strategic safeguard based on taqwa and justice. In abiding by the written conditions and making a proper payment of dues, he acquits himself before the people and before God. Believers are witnesses of God's religion. Just as they are not allowed to knowingly hide anything from God, they should similarly never conceal any evidence they may possess. Concealing evidence is to nurture criminal mentality and to shirk the role they can play in making just decisions. Man's conscience demands that the truth should be acknowledged and untruth should be proclaimed to be such. In matters of justice, one who withholds evidence for the sake of prestige or some other worldly considerations is like a criminal who becomes a witness to his own crime.
If ye are on a journey and cannot find a scribe, a pledge with possession may serve the purpose. And if one of you deposits a thing on trust with another, let the trustee faithfully discharge his trust, and let him fear his Lord. Conceal not evidence, for whoever conceals it, his heart is tainted with sin. And Allah knoweth all that ye do.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayah 285 for the Tafsir.
To Allah belongeth all that is in the heavens and on earth. Whether ye show what is in your minds or conceal it, Allah calleth you to account for it. He forgiveth whom He pleaseth and punisheth whom He pleaseth, for Allah hath power over all things.
See Surah Al-Baqarah ayah 285 for the Tafsir.
Messenger believeth in what hath been revealed to him from his Lord, as do the men of faith. Each one of them believeth in Allah, His angels, His books, and His messengers. We make no distinction, they say, between one and another of His messengers. And they say, we hear, and we obey, we seek Thy forgiveness, our Lord, and to Thee is the end of all journeys.
Everything in the universe is under God's command. Right from dust particles to the stars, all are bound by God's decree plan. They must follow the path set for them by God. Man alone is the creature who finds that he may choose different paths of his own free will. But man does not possess freedom in an absolute sense. If he has freedom, it is so that he may be put to the test. Man has also to submit to the will of God like the rest of the universe. The life of restraint that the rest of the universe is obliged to follow must be followed voluntarily by man. He should not be deceived by the appearance of there being no one before or behind him. The truth of the matter is that at all times man is watched over by the Lord of the universe. He watches each and everything, whether great or small, whether within him or without.
On no soul doth Allah place a burden greater than it can bear. It gets every good that it earns, and it suffers every ill that it earns. Pray, our Lord, condemn us not if we forget or fall into error, our Lord. Lay not on us a burden like that which Thou didst lay on those before us, our Lord. Lay not on us a burden greater than we have strength to bear. Blot out our sins, and grant us forgiveness. Have mercy on us. Thou art our protector, help us against those who stand against faith.
Who is that man who measures up to the standards of the Almighty? He is one who is a man of faith, who submits and obeys. Faith means a conscious surrender to God, while obedience means practical surrender. For this to become a reality, man must enshrine God within himself as his creator and sustainer. He must be one to discover the reality that the system of the universe is not soulless or mechanical. Rather, it is a live system which is run by God's devoted workers. He must be one to recognize those servants of God chosen by Him to communicate this message to mankind. The book revealed by God for the guidance of mankind must be accepted by Him and become a part of His thoughts in the real sense. When faith in God, His angels, His books, and His messengers is firmly rooted in his heart and mind, he wholeheartedly surrenders himself to treading the path shown by God. This faith and obedience should not be a matter of rituals or just an outward show. Rather, faith and obedience should be so inseparable from his soul that he starts to remember God at all times, and his whole life becomes entirely dependent on God.